Hey, how you doing?
Hey Dan, how you going, man?
Good, man.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
First things first, welcome to the Aussie Screen Printing Club. Thanks so much for coming on. I know you guys have been frenetic and so have we. But more
No,
than
that's
that,
all good.
congratulations on your 10th anniversary.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, that was a big thing yesterday. So,
Did you do anything special?
oh yeah, we had a little bit of a gathering of all friends and family, and gave away some of our 10-year anniversary T-shirts because we do a T-shirt every year with a new artist. So,
Nice.
yeah, it was a bit of fun.
Yeah, cool. And
Hmm.
how does it actually feel to be 10 years into this?
I don't know where the time went. It doesn't feel like it's been 10 years, but yeah, clearly has been. So yeah, it's good. Hmm.
What got you into screen printing? Like, where did you start? Were you in your garage? Was it something you'd learned as a trade? How did it all happen?
Yeah, that's a really bit of a sideways story. Not probably the normal way people get into it, but I'm a mechanic by trade, and but I'd actually worked in retail at JB Hi-Fi for a long time.
Yep.
And at that time, I decided to make an iPhone game, teach myself graphic design and vector to do
Yeah.
2D game sprites. Taught myself to code, built an iPhone game over 2 years, released it, and during the process of releasing this game, I that I worked on outside of work hours, I went to go get some t-shirts made to give away for the release.
Okay.
And I had a terrible experience.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I gave this printer that I just Googled locally at the time back in 2000 and would have been 2008 or 9. And yeah, they completely dropped the ball. It was out of rego, it didn't look right. And I think back to it now, I was like, wow, how are they even in business? Like it was terrible. So
Wow.
I didn't get a proof. I literally gave them a USB with the artwork, and they said, "Yeah, come back in 2 weeks." And it was just, yeah, it was all wrong. So
Oh, wow.
then I
So
went on
sorry.
the hunt for a better shop and found one, and was really impressed with this showroom and a polar opposite. Like got fully walked through the process and
Mm.
explained I'd get a print proof and how it would all work. And a few weeks later, I had gorgeous t-shirts. And when I picked up my t-shirts, I said, "What's involved with actually working here, like learning more about the industry? I'm really interested." And so it was a really fun way to apply my sales and customer service as well
Mhm.
as this graphic design artwork digitally that I've been teaching myself for a few years. So yeah, so
That's that's
that's how I got
incredible.
into it.
So fortunately, because you had a really bad start with another screen printer, you chose a better one,
Mm.
and they let you in. So that you actually got a job there, did you?
Yeah, I did. I became their sales guy, and the owner stopped doing sales so much. He just really focused on running his business, and
Okay.
they had two separation artists that both worked part time, 2 days and 3 days a week. And then they had two screen printers, they had three screen printers out the back, and two or three shop assistants that made screens, mixed inks, packed boxes were catching, stuff like that. And yeah, I learned a lot at that shop back in Brisbane. And yeah, it was interesting experience to have a complete career change where I wasn't working weekends, I wasn't in retail anymore. It was
Yeah.
as a manager. It was really fun. Mm.
And so, what made you take the jump, or how long after that did you make the jump? Well, obviously, you made the jump 10 years
Mm.
ago, but what
Yeah.
was it that made you do that? You decided you want to go on your own.
Yeah. So I guess for me, I guess a little bit of backstory on that quickly though. I won't dive
Yeah,
too
yeah.
deep down it, but like working in sales, I wasn't some gun salesman. I just really believed in honest advice and just really working with someone, like being like, what didn't you like about your last TV and what are you using this one for? And maybe we can find you something that works. And I seemed to get this big clientele list that followed me when I would change stores, stuff like that,
Yeah,
to a
wow.
different JB store. And I guess with screen printing, I just noticed that there was a slight disconnect in that typically with screen printing, they're owned by screen printers and they build up their own shop and start adding more and more equipment and staff and build more customers. And some of them are fantastic. Some of them were like my first experience, just completely missing any kind of customer service. But
Mm.
the shop I worked for was actually fantastic, but had a few disconnects. Like if you wanted it folded, if you wanted it relabeled, if you wanted to have it bagged ready for sale, they didn't offer all those solutions. And I didn't really go looking to see if there was any other shops that did, but I just thought at some point I'd really like to start my own shop and
Mm.
yeah, and offer a full service, like sit down, have a chat about your brand that's either established or you want to start, and show them that we can handle every part of the process. So yeah, that's what made me want to kind of start my own shop to do a full service.
Yeah, well, okay. And when you started, did you go in with the full service yourself, or were you restricting yourself to embroidery or screen printing, or like how did you actually set up? Go for the whole full booner, or
Yeah, so it kind of had a soft start for about 2 or 3 years there. I was still working at screen print shops. I moved to Melbourne and worked in shops here. Um, and they were just like, I'd print jobs at my own, at wherever I worked, and I would just do that on the side, which I'd tell the bosses that this is what I do, and eventually I'm going to go, and they'd be like, yeah, no worries. Typically, it was met pretty well, and I did. I dived in straight with full service. Like I'd be folding and bagging 400 shirts in my apartment on a little
yeah, right.
trestle table, much to my wife's distress for an afternoon getting shirts ready for a client's weekend event. And yeah, and then eventually we moved into actually printing in house and being able to quality control and run our own print schedule and offer the quality of prints and high color half tone photo artwork, stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
And you printed on a manual in your home, is that what you're saying?
No, we printed it at the shops that I worked at.
Use the shop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then we
It's
actually moved to a
astonishing.
factory space. Yeah, so
It's,
yeah.
I often hear that story about people learning in another shop and being allowed to use the equipment at the end of the day or the evening or the weekend. I don't think there's any other industry that would really allow
No,
you to do that, right?
no,
It's
no.
pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting way to start, and I was really appreciated like the support we got from some of the places I worked and being able to build up my own business on the side without encroaching on theirs because our main focus was apparel brands. So
Yeah.
while that is a big chunk of screen printing, like a lot of people do event screen printing or they specialize in schools or stuff like that, music bands, we were really focused on either established apparel brands or ones that wanted to start one. So yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
And what equipment did you start with, and how
Oh.
much has that changed over the years?
We started with a cheapy Chinese $700 press from eBay.
Yep.
That was horrendous, didn't hold rego, had no off contact adjustment, could barely go into the gate for a print flash print white, a double hit white to get it aligned again the second time.
Yeah.
Massive flex, pallet deflection in the actual arms. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But it really taught you like a lot of little tricks to kind of really refine your strokes and pressure and angle and even just holding the pallet with your knee to keep
Mm.
it stop the arm from flexing. We were using all the tricks. So
Wow.
that was pretty crappy. And we had a tiny little oven, a little like a portable oven that you could just plug into. It was single phase, but it was 15 amp. So yeah. And that did the job at the start, but quickly outgrew all that equipment, and now we all run M&R. So we've got
Yeah,
two
right.
M&R presses. We've got an old Jones Brothers press. We've got two M&R electric dryers, and yeah, and the whole setup.
Yeah, okay. And was there anything between those? Like, did you get an old second-hand press, or like
Nah,
between like a Chinese press and an M&R? It's,
oh,
you know,
worlds apart.
yeah,
Worlds apart. Yeah, yeah. First we got a cruiser, and then we stepped up to the one after that, which at the moment is eluding my brain because it's a big day yesterday. But yeah. So yeah, no, the M&R presses are a joy to print on, which is really helps with just registering a $6 print, having micro reg,
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's golden.
yeah.
Yeah.
And was that the print shop you worked for? Were they using M&R equipment or?
No, a
Was
lot
that?
of them had Taz autos. That was very popular. Most shops I worked at had Taz autos and maybe just one manual for fiddly stuff or inside neck prints or
Yep.
sleeve prints or a small run of 20 of something.
Yep.
But yeah, we've never made the leap to an auto yet. It's probably something we'll do next year, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so why did you choose M&R? What, you just good reputation, or what was it that made you want to go for that brand?
Yeah, I just did a bit of research and like there was a few brands I was interested in. Anatol was one of them, which there wasn't a supplier in Australia at the time. And I reached
Yep.
out to a supplier that was in Greece or something that was able to import it to Australia for us.
Wow. Okay.
And got talking about some of their presses because I've watched some stuff on the Print Life about how impressed he was, Cam from the Print Life on YouTube. I
Yep.
don't know if you know that channel.
Cam Irvin. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And
Crazy.
how much he loved the Anatol and like just out of the box, how it was like all the pallets were pre-leveled, and I was very impressed with that kind of stuff. But there was no distributor here, which there is now, but there wasn't
Mm.
then. And then I got a bit more research, and it just seemed like M&R had the whole package if you were going to do manual and auto, which we wanted to transition to an auto at some point for the
Yep.
large jobs that we get. And I liked the idea that you could use the same pallets and stuff like that, and it was all kind of a similar system. So
Yeah.
that's why I chose M&R. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, there's a distributor in Australia.
Yeah, raw tech. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
helps.
And so, just to get this my head around this, you've got two M&R manual presses and a, did you say Jones Brothers press?
Yeah, we call it our click clack press. I think it's a Jones Brothers. It's a bit of an unknown, but like basically, instead of a spring system, when you pull the screen down, it's got rear clamps and it's got this little click clack spring. So you lift it up and it clicks and then it holds the screen up. You just lift the
Right.
screen a couple of centimeters and then you can pull it back
Oh,
down.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really nice for long print runs, like 1,000 shirt runs, because it's not like this. It's not going to fling your squeegee across the shop floor when you accidentally are a bit tired and lift the screen up and the spring snaps it back up and stuff like that. So yeah.
You can control it a little bit more.
Mm,
Yeah. Wow. I've not actually seen one of those, but that sounds quite smart.
yeah, it's a bit different. But yeah.
Does that have micro edge on it as well, or just the
No,
M&Rs?
no, just the M&Rs too. That one's well, it's not true. Like, I mean, with rear clamp, you've got a lot of movement. It's just really important about where you put the image on the screen as far as vertically, but left to right, and angling your rego marks in, it's not too hard to actually get that dialed. Side clamps, are the dream. But yeah, the rear clamp machine was a nice one for just little fiddly jobs. Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Now tell us about Born and Thread, the name. How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, I've been wanting to start this company for a really long time. It had been in the back of my mind, burning away. And obviously being ambitious and wanting to run my own business, and had already done a couple of little side hustles, like building that iPhone game, which was just something that interested me. I didn't think that was ever going to be a career change. It was an
Mm.
exercise and an interesting project for a couple of years. But one day I was just sitting there and I was watching something on telly literally 10 years ago today. And it was something about being born and bred. It was on the telly on free to air, Channel 10. I can't remember what I was watching. And I was like, born and thread. I love a good pun. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what we live is like our catchphrases. We live and breathe t-shirts. So right there in that moment, I hopped on the phone and checked that Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, everything was available. There was
Yeah.
no other born and thread anywhere in the world that I could see in Google. So I snapped up all the names, registered the URL, and that was done. And
Wow. Just like
about
that.
3 years after I started it, a guy in the States has opened a Born and Thread in the US. Same
Oh,
spot
okay.
and everything. Yeah, so that was interesting. And every now and again, I get an email from someone in Texas or somewhere there being like, hey, where's my order? I'm like, you've got the wrong company. Sorry. But yeah, so it seemed like a unique name and it was kind of just a play on words. Mm.
Yeah, no, I think it's really smart. It works. It's quite
Thanks.
different. Yeah, not just kind of like Joe Blogg's print shop.
Yeah, no, yeah. I didn't know how big it would get. I didn't know if I'd even get it off the ground. I just had an idea, and 10 years later, here we are, six of us in two factories opposite each other in a complex. It's a nice feeling, to have that progression. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. It's a scalable business, isn't it? I mean, in one sense, I suppose all business should be scalable, but there's something about mass production. I think I'm obsessed with processes, as you're probably aware, but in
Yeah.
terms of how processes grow, you know, if you can balance that and manage that, it's very, very scalable, but always fraught with bottlenecks. So how do you go running a business? I mean, that's new to you. Well, 10 years ago, it was new to you.
Yeah.
How did you enjoy that side of it, or does it drive you mad?
Yeah, I really do. I think managing JB Hi-Fi or working in a big retail chain and working in some print shops after that, I've always had a process obsessed as well. So actually similar to yourself, but always felt frustrations of being limited within somebody else's framework. And
Mhm.
it and it wasn't like I thought I could do it better. I just like to explore other ideas, especially being process, obsessed. So
Mm.
detail orientated, I normally call it, but like it was an opportunity to kind of go, okay, maybe I could build things in a way that I think makes sense and see if they work. Um,
Mm.
so that's what was challenging at the start, was to find what worked. And I was very active on Instagram when we first started, and I
Mm.
committed to it full time. I quit my last screen printing job at the time.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and my wife was very supportive. We hadn't had kids yet. We owned an apartment in Richmond in inner city Melbourne. And she was like, if you're going to do it now.
Yep. Yep.
Like,
Why?
and she was fully supportive. And I was like, okay. And if it doesn't work, we always go back to printing in another shop.
Yep.
So yeah, it was very challenging at the start. We set lots of little milestones we wanted to hit. Like, is this feasible to live off? Is it feasible to grow? Is it feasible to get a reputation in in most cities, there's generally a pretty heavy saturation of screen printers. And in
Mm.
Melbourne, no shortage. Yeah, it seems like we've carved out an area for ourselves.
So, just going back to that processes thing, it just occurred to me that you're in more of a unique situation, if that makes sense, because you've got a background in some screen printing, well, quite a lot, but also in sales and sales in screen printing. And it seems to me a lot of people that start in screen printing don't have those experiences, but they want to learn how to screen print. And then
Mm,
comes the question, how do I get the sales? Whereas you've
yeah.
got that front end stuff. So you've been able to kind of see and know and understand those processes from the get-go in terms of how you engage or even hook a customer and then
Mm,
start the customer service. When you started and got going and perhaps got the next member of staff or whatever, did you have a process in place after sales at that point, or was it just here's an order, go do this, writing it on a bit of paper, or did you kind of pull
yeah.
those processes together at that point?
Oh yeah, I ran the business pretty much on my own for the first 3, 4 years. And getting my first employee, I wasn't actually looking for one at the time. I was very busy, and at the time, nearly doing 500,000 turnover a year. And we didn't have kids yet, but we were looking very close to do it at that point. And my wife was like, "You can't be working these 80-hour weeks anymore. I
Yeah,
think you need to
yeah,
bring somebody on board." And at the time, I was just like, it's still early. I want to keep building it, but it made sense. And I had someone contact me for work experience. They were doing a screen printing and textile design degree, and they were
wow,
printing yardage fabric at uni, and that's what they wanted to go on to do afterwards. And I said, "Yeah, you can come do your week's work experience here," and showed her the process. And at the end of it, she asked if she could work 1 day a week while she was still at uni. I said, "Yeah, actually, that could really help. Like, there'd be something. It's a good way to ease into it, see if I could benefit from an employee." And then I had so many, the question you asked, sorry, was that I had so many processes in place because I was just detail obsessed. And, we had job sheets. And before we were printing in house, we obviously had to be really organized to be able to hand a job over to a screen printer. So it was easy for them, and there was a benefit for them to maybe lose the garment profit that you normally get from supplying and printing garments yourself. Tried
yeah,
to make it really streamlined. That was the way I would pitch at the start, for the first year or two, to externally do screen printing. So I would normally do all the steps. Pantones would be picked, ready for ink mixing, if
yeah,
they didn't have that already on the shelf. And the job would be split into white and black prints if it was a color change in the print run. And I'd normally try not to have too many print position variations or any of that kind of rubbish that's super frustrating
Yeah.
and can slow a print run down. But yeah, and because of that, I had these job sheets that linked to the invoice, which was all in an Excel database as far as the job tracker, so the way that we checked what was with what. And so when I brought on my staff member, I basically spent the whole time showing them how to use my system that I'd built. And yeah, it worked flawlessly. The quoting process, the way that she quoted, and before I knew it, one day a week she was booking jobs, and I was like, "Wow, you're paying for a week's worth of wages. Awesome! You should come work for me as soon as
Yeah.
you
Wow.
finish uni." And she did, and she's been there
Yeah.
now
Right.
years. Yeah,
She's still with you.
yeah, she's my right hand lady. That's right. We
That's
run the shop
fantastic.
together. It's great.
So she didn't end up doing screen printing on long yards of fabric.
Well,
Yeah.
she has actually. One of our screen printers, that had also done the same course, that was a friend of hers, actually got a job at a yardage printer, and she'd been working for me for a few years as a screen printer. And she said to me, "Dan, I'm going to go and do this a few days a week, but I don't want to leave Born and Thread. I love what we do here. So can I still work a couple of days a week?" And I said, "Yep, that's awesome that you want to do that. Like, you're going to pay more in taxes getting two wages, you know."
Mm.
She didn't care. And eventually my little right hand lady that helps me run the business, she does one day a week over there to kind of get her art projects out of the way
Yeah.
and do what
Nice.
she actually studied, which is great. So yeah, everybody kind of wins.
So she's got the passion for screen printing
Oh,
as a thing now. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Mm.
And are you still using the Excel system, or have you progressed to a shop management system, or what are you
Yeah,
doing for processes now?
mix of both. I wanted to transition away from Excel, and I looked at a whole bunch of different shop management systems, and the ones I found that were the most effective leaned really heavily on garment management from fulfillment, like American style print systems, where when they order something from Gildan, it comes from 8 different warehouses, and it kind of
Yeah.
allows
Yeah.
you to track when that stock comes in and how to match the job together. And it just didn't really serve us because we have one warehouse for every supplier in Australia other than JB's
Yeah.
ware. And
Yeah.
it just seemed a bit over the top. So haven't found anything I like yet, but I've built a few systems myself. I've got some coding friends from my days back in making video games, so iPhone games. So I have had some friends, we put some ideas together on a late night talking, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
build
Right.
our own software, but I don't know yet. But at the moment, it's really just Zero and a whole bunch of automated Excel functions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
We use Zero as our
Mm.
accounts and quote system. We do
Yep.
our own mock-ups, like
Yep.
super fast mock-ups. And then we just built, what we found is, when we started, just print out the orders
Mm.
from Zero. We created our own job template and printed them out, and just went, well, let's get on with these.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had too many orders, and I told you that one was urgent. Why are you doing that? What, that kind of. And we realized that prioritization was a nightmare. So we
Mm.
just built a very simple system in Monday.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it works really well. It just allows us really quickly to reprioritize at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
We normally come in the morning, say, right, let's go through the job list for this week or this day, and
Mm.
what's in the pipeline, what's being shunted, what's happened with the deliveries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we've set it up so that it also emails the customer at various points in the process. Because
Mm.
as we've got bigger, probably like you, our turnaround times have started to stretch. And
Mm-hmm.
it's nice having a 3 to 5 day turnaround, but when it gets to a couple of weeks, it's like, okay, there's a lot of jobs sitting here, and this customer's now screaming. So
Yeah.
putting in those various stages. So when the order goes in, they get an email, tells them, hey, you're in the system, yada yada yada. When
Mm-hmm.
they get when we burn the screens, at that point, it tells them the stock's in, the screens have been burned, and it just kind of talks them through the whole process so that they don't kind of come back worried about dates and schedules and
Mm.
things. And we found that very helpful. I can see it's got limitations. There'll
Mm-hmm.
come a point when maybe something like Printavo might be right, but I do worry a little bit about being confined to another set of processes that have been designed for a different kind of system, like
Right.
multi-distribution warehousing, as you're
Yeah.
describing. That
Yeah.
worries me a little bit. Hey, quick question on that. how quickly can you get AS Color delivered to you?
Next day.
I know you have to have the best of everything down there in terms of
Sometimes,
that.
sometimes if I order a big enough order, if it's 500 shirts or something, and I order it before 11 o'clock in the morning, they put it on the same day courier just because it's cheaper than individual box courier. And
Yeah, right.
a van rock up at 2 in the afternoon with a pallet wrap of stock, and you're just
Wow,
like, oh, awesome. Okay, let's get that prepped.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, very lucky.
And are you mostly printing on AS Color, or are you? Is it across all the brand? I mean, I know you do Gildan and Ramo, and I think JB Ware you mentioned.
Mm,
Um, are you
pretty
printing
much
on all of
it's
them equally, or?
not really. Pretty much exclusively AS Color these days.
Yeah.
At the start, we would mix and match a lot of garments to solve problems. But as AS Color's range has expanded, like they've exploded in styles and colors in the last 5 years. Like every time I talk to our rep or the point of contact at the warehouse, our state manager or whatever, they just, when they send me a list of what's coming in the next month, I just get overwhelmed of all the new
Mm.
products I've got to put into Zero, because we've got every product in Zero already priced up at its
Oh,
price
right.
range.
Okay. Okay.
We've got something like 4,500 product lines in Zero, and
Wow. Okay.
allows my staff to, if we get a phone call and they send us through the artwork, we can have a quote to them in 30 seconds, like typically.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
That's
quick.
amazing.
Don't have to work out any percentages. It's all pre-made based on the volume, and then the print colors. We've got obviously our print pricing in there and screen setups and any extra fees. Yeah, so it's kind of it's basically we've shifted towards AS Color just because their quality control is really good. I know there's been some rumors lately of quality slipping in some of their core styles, but for us, we haven't found that yet. But yeah, I guess if a client specifically is after something outside of the AS Color range, we wouldn't turn it away, but mostly AS Color. Yeah.
Yeah. We found the
What
same.
about for you guys?
Yeah, it's the same story. We started with a Bangladeshi company called Kia. We
Oh
didn't.
yeah.
I mean, this is Kia. This industry's brand new. We've been going for 6 years, and so I knew nothing about this industry and started as a hobby and just kind of fell in love with it. Like I love the whole. I don't enjoy printing, I got to say, anymore.
Yeah.
I had to print yesterday because we're flat stick, and I was like, man, this is hard work, but
Mm.
I love the process. But we started not knowing one brand from another, and someone said, so we started with Kia, had terrible issues with the quality of the garments at the time, and I don't know what they're like now. And someone said, "Oh, why don't you try Gildan?" And I was like, "Well, who are they?" We just knew nothing, but we got
Mm.
going with them, and we do a lot of stuff for churches and kids camps and that kind of stuff. So that market generally isn't interested in a nice staple tee, although
Mm.
we've branched out into all these other markets now. So that worked well for a while. And then we just started getting customers asking for AS Color. And
Yeah.
I said, well, we better crack on to this because it's obviously what people want. And I'd say 99% now is AS
Mhm.
Color. Simple as
Same.
that. And
Yeah.
it's a lovely product. It's nice to print, produces a great print.
Mhm.
The color range is so much nicer than anything else.
Yeah.
They did have some stock issues a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, this is a bit hard. But now, never an issue. It's very rare,
Yeah.
whereas some of the other companies still have big problems with that. So
Mm.
yeah, we love them. We really don't advertise anything else.
No, same. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. We've got a big AS Color wall in our showroom that they graciously wanted to put up to showcase that we're AS Color, through and through. And it's just something that I find, yeah, customers were asking for, but we were introducing very early on, just from my experience with apparel brands always chasing the next best garment. And
Yeah,
it wasn't an unreasonable price, especially when they started producing volume and you could buy
yeah,
volume from them and get that discount. It's a
yeah,
really fair price point, I think, for the product.
yeah. And I've noticed that, um, probably like you, I listen to quite a few podcasts, most of which are American, and I've
Mm.
noticed everybody's really talking about AS Color now. And a few years
Yeah.
ago, people are like, "Who?" And
Yeah.
now, they're like, I think it was Stephen Ferris said recently, he reckons the staple tee is the best t-shirt in the world at the moment.
Oh, I would
And
agree.
yeah,
I got staple tees that are 9, 8 years old, 10 years old even, that are still wearable. A little bit
yeah,
sun faded from just being hung in the line outside, but they're not sagging, they're not ripping, the garment's not falling apart, the print's still held up, and I'm just like, sometimes when I'm in the middle of a client meeting, I'll often point, oh yeah, this is an 8-year-old shirt, and they're like, what?
yeah,
And you're like, yeah, like I wear this as a work shirt at least once a week, like it's held up really well, and that just blows their
yeah,
mind.
yeah. What a great advert.
Mm,
Can I take you back to processes? Because obviously
yeah.
you've got the same kind of interest as I have on that. Um, if I was to say to you, you've been going 10 years, you've got a whole set of processes running, they've been modified and so on, and you've upgraded your kit over that time. What place is still a big bottleneck for you or what number, you might have more than one. Where are the bottlenecks for you in that line of
Bottlenecks for
processes?
me, there's a few. I'm still working on them. I think redundancies, making myself redundant, so I'm not a point of contact for every problem.
Yep,
And that's something I've really focused on this year in the later half of the year, and I'm working really hard on next year.
yep,
So probably the biggest bottleneck is myself, and not because I'm a control freak, which I am, but I'm trying to step that away from the business and allow my staff to just own everything, which they do anyway. But when there's a problem, I feel like not that things come to a stop, but no one wants to move forward without knowing whether there's, because we've got so many processes, there's no process for this. What do I do?
that's right. Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, that's kind of bit me in the bum with having all these processes. So the biggest bottleneck would be when there's a shift outside of the norm. So what I've been doing to combat that is originally I was writing process manuals, screenshotting and manually typing up all this stuff, and it was super labor intensive.
sure.
And I saw a video in a podcast where they were like, you have to record everything you do while you're doing. And I was like, what do they mean record? And I started Googling and found this program called Zoom that you could record from your iMac, the screen, and your voice. And I just have 100+ hours of just recordings of me like, okay, when AS Color sends stock and there might be a mispick, this is where you find the invoice digitally in our emails. This is how you reply to support at AS Color.
Yeah,
This
right.
is how you tell them what's happened, and they'll respond and fix the problem for you, and
Yeah,
this is what we do with the film printer. This is how you run the RIP software. Like, and even though there's people that know these things, if that person's sick, there's now a database of like little video snippets and 5-minute tutorials on how to outline customer fonts and stuff like
nice.
that, where they haven't outlined their fonts in Illustrator and it's not embedded. So stuff like that, where we can just have solutions for stuff that I don't have to explain over and over again when they pop up. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
the
that's very
bottleneck.
smart. We're miles away from doing that. Um, that point you made about sort of releasing yourself from the business, I feel like been doing lots of different businesses for years, and I feel like I've never managed to fully pull that off. One company I ran, I was close, but again, and I think the downfall. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. Really, is partly to do with my personality of wanting to control things, and it always makes things worse.
Yeah,
Um,
it
but that's
can.
it. Yeah, it's an aspiration for me to try and, I'm much older and kind of do need to slow down really and get other people doing more of what I do.
Mm,
Um, Tell me a bit about, you know, out in the production line.
mm.
Do you have bottlenecks there? Like, for example, you all on the press and running the jobs and picking the stock, and then you have to go and reclaim, or do you have people reclaiming all the time, or how does that sort of work for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I call them bottlenecks, but like I know what you're mentioning. Refined a few systems. So we've had basically 4 systems that are all linked through Dropbox, and we also have Slack Messenger on all the work computers. So we're going to go paperless next year. So there'll be iPads
Well,
for staff rather than having job sheets, which will be nice because they can just update a job sheet live. The
yeah, wow, that's
printers
great.
can, that's something I'm working on at the moment. But what we currently have is our quoting on Zero and invoicing on Zero, and then we have obviously MailChimp for newsletters and all that kind of communication with our client base. But then we also have we have two different Excel systems. So we have one that's our job tracker, which I basically control, and part of what I'm recording a lot of videos on at the moment, which I input every job in there, and whether it's getting embroidery, whether it's getting accessories like stickers or silk neck labels or swing tags, whether we're doing any extra stuff like folding and bagging, or a split delivery to multiple event venues, something like that. And then from there, we make a job sheet from Excel that links from the invoice number, so you don't have to manually rewrite all the details.
Yeah.
So there's one point of detail that we write in. The job sheet then has a printout of the vector PDF mockup that we do for the client. That's all scaled to size, so there's no misprint where you accidentally grab the artwork out of an approved mockup and don't scale it correctly. It's already scaled in the mockup.
Yep.
And then from there, there's a print schedule Excel database, which is on the printer's computer, which allows our print team to see. I can reprioritize every morning. We do a weekly meeting, a morning meeting, to run through anything that might be an issue or something they're concerned about time-wise that hasn't been allocated enough time. So that's kind of a run through when I get in. And at the end of the week, we touch base and how did we do this week? Did I overestimate? Did we underestimate? Do you have more time than you thought? And we're always refining that. But the bottleneck is probably screens. We've got a good stripping and reclaiming system with the Easy Way dip tank. I don't know if you've heard of that, but if you haven't, get on it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Raw Tech again, they sell it, but the M&R distributors. But the bottleneck for us is probably we need to have another person actually coating and stripping screens. At the moment, we've got a system where when a job's finished, the screens just get the ink taken out of them and they get put into that black press that we don't use very often, the click-clack press. And from there, one of our staff that's a catcher and packer, in between catching jobs and laying them up, she'll clean out those screens, detape them, clean them up, ready to either be put away or to be reclaimed. And then in the reclaiming area, in our dark room, we have our staff, basically one of our printers, when they are all up to date and they get ahead of the schedule, they go across and strip them and degrease them and get them ready for new emulsion and coat them up and put it in our little dark room box. So so that's the bottleneck.
Sorry, and that's the bottleneck, the reclaiming and recoding.
I think in our production, we really need another staff member.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. There's 9 of us in this business, but 4 part-time casuals, and they're always the reclaimers.
Wow.
Yeah. And part of the problem is, we're not in a big city like Melbourne, so resources are pretty scant. I kind of live for the day when, a bit like you, when someone walks through the door and says, "Hey, screen printing is wonderful. When do I start?" Straight through the door. And so it's really hard getting people that, want to work, but also know or interested in anything to do with screen printing. And if they come in, they're going to be reclaiming, and you kind of feel bad, like, here's all this great stuff, and by the way, you're just taking out ink and stripping these screens. But so we have a little team that we just cycle around, and just pretty much every day. There's no one doing it today because of the podcast, because we wouldn't be able to hear. But we can't keep up with it, and it's a major problem to us. We only have 2 people that coat. One is me and one is one of the press operators. And we keep it that way because, you have all sorts of issues if you let anyone coat a screen.
Yeah.
And I'd like to look at, getting an auto coder or something. I think that hopefully that'll be next for us, so that anyone could do that. But that's our major bottleneck. We sit on around 200 screens. And at any given moment, 60 can be there. I know there's more than 60 there right now to reclaim. And if you get someone in and they can't do many hours that day and they can only do 20, you're like, we need more screens, So that's been a big issue for us as well. So just going back, you obviously do it differently to us. So the screens come off, you tear down the press, the screens go to the click-clack press, and they're effectively kind of press washed in a way, are they?
Well, just cleaned up enough to either go into storage or be ready for the dip tank. So for the dip tank, you don't want them covered in ink. You just want them reasonably clean, and you don't want any tape on the screen
Yeah.
because that's a waste of the dip tank's power trying to break down glue. You just rather attack the emulsion and be done with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and no, but I'm curious because with our dip tank, you can get between 20 to 30 screens cleaned and degreased and dehazed in an hour. So how many are you getting through?
Well, each
Reclaim?
day, how many screens do we
Well,
expend a day? Or
if you dedicated someone to stripping screens, you had a big pile there. How many
yeah,
would they get through in an hour?
I could do 15 screens an
Okay,
hour easily,
okay, yeah.
but not everyone can.
Mm,
Um, so from not from reclaim. So from the we tear down. We do it differently. So we tear down. It goes into the what we call the wet area.
mhm,
Any excess ink is removed. Then tape's removed there, and then we clean the screens in that area. We
mhm,
remove the ink that way. It's just like we use a dip tank.
mm,
We're using for the auto. We'll use what are they? 800 mil by 700 mil screens. We can
mm,
get 5 of those in. It's when it's replenished, 30 seconds in, get them
yeah.
out, get the next ones in, and blow those out.
Mm,
And they do them in 20 batches, and then they'll degrease, and then they'll go dry them in our kind of dark room.
okay.
But some people just cannot go quick enough to see that
Up. Yeah.
number decrease enough, and it's frustrating. So what it means is, I don't, it's probably the same for you. I don't know, but it ends up with me doing them.
Mm,
I'm the filling boy for all of these things.
picking up the
Um,
deficit. Yeah.
yeah, and that just shows you there's a bottleneck, there's a problem there, and
Yes.
so sort of trying to work on resolving that a little bit more.
Mm.
Um, okay, and any other areas that you feel are bottlenecks in that production process?
That's pretty much it, just reclaiming screens. We don't have an auto that we punch through really big orders that we chuck in lots of screens. Like we have two 6-color presses. And I think at some point we're moving to a new factory next year. At the moment, we've got two split factories opposite each other in the same complex that are both about 120 square meters each, which I wouldn't have thought we'd outgrown them as quickly as we have, but we absolutely have. So I've got my eye on a whole bunch of different ones, which will initiate in early next year, ready for a June move. But yeah, about 450 square meters, which will allow us to get that auto, get that big oven to support that compressor area, and actually add probably an 8-color manual just for some of that fine detail stuff, but it's not big enough to set up on an auto. I mean, stuff is worth setting up an auto at a certain number, but it's also about the setup time too, whether it's economical. So sometimes it does and doesn't map out, but yeah.
Let me speak into that, if I may. What would be your minimum order quantity for an 8-color print?
50 at least. Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
worth doing on an auto,
Yeah, really. Even
definitely.
50. Yeah. Just because
Yeah,
the press time, once it's running, it's done very quickly. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
We ran we got an 8-color manual as well as
Mhm.
an auto, and what was it? I don't remember why. For some reason, we ran it on the auto, but it was polos, and it
Mhm.
was just a 3-color print left
Mhm.
chest. And I was using it to train someone a little bit, but they got up to speed. It was a pretty easy print.
Mm.
We worked out that the first one off was 7 minutes, and then you got one off a minute or less later, and another one,
Yeah.
and then you reset, as it were.
Mm.
It's just, and I was looking and I was like, wow, why do we do this? This is just dumb, right? I suspect we were using the auto for something else and
Mm.
just trying to squeeze the job in.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I did a simulated process job on a manual,
Mm.
and we've got an 8-color, as I said, and I just was so excited, this is the best thing ever. And it was
Yeah.
for a band, and it was a really beautiful print. And I just could not believe how long it took.
Yes.
I,
Simulated process, like, you're really dialing in a whole bunch of variables, even just on the fabric style alone.
yeah.
Yeah, it can be quite.
So even at 50, you'll probably want to do that on the auto.
Yeah, okay, it's good to
Yeah,
know. I mean, like I worked in most of the shops I worked in either had one or two manuals and were mainly auto focused, and I can see why. The economy of scale is there, and I think it'll bring a new level for us. But it seems that it's very hard to find screen printers that know how to use a manual press. A lot of people in Melbourne, when we put a job out, are interested, but they've never had printing experience. And it's not that I don't want to train them, it's just that I know that the pathway to being a competent manual screen printer, you're dedicating 3 to 6 months to someone, like holding their hand the whole time.
yeah,
Not really, not that's the wrong word, not holding their hand, but kind of helping and monitoring and problem solving during their print run when they're struggling to get, good ink deposit down on the first layer, stuff like that.
yeah,
And it just becomes something that we kept chasing experienced printers. And we've kind of done a full 360 on that, or 180 on that, where we now have a really great experienced screen printer, has 20 plus years experience, and he's my champion for anything high detail, halftone orientated, simulated process, CMYK process, photo print, stuff like that. And
yeah,
then we have a second printer with them that is competent and really good and wants to get to that level, is hungry for it and a lot younger. And but yeah, I think in most of the people that applied had automatic experience, because most shops have transitioned to autos, is what I was getting at, because of
yeah, yeah.
economy of scale. It is so effective for output.
It is. It is.
Mm.
And like for us, it took us a while to kind of experience that properly,
Mm.
partly because um, our old tunnel dryer was just too narrow and didn't have a long lead in and so on. And that you kind of looked at it and went, wow, we can do 500 an hour. Oh, it's a long back print. We can do 200 an hour, and it's still,
Yeah.
that's great. But so when we changed that, wow, it just picked up any slack. So
Mm.
if we had any kind of particular peaks in production, they just got soaked up with it so
Yeah.
nicely. So we found that very, very helpful. But when we first started, we were just so slow setting up
Mm.
a job. It
Yeah.
was it was so painful.
Mm.
Um, but now we throw them in very quickly and get them set up very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so what kind of ink do you print with? Are you dare I say it, are you water-based only shop, or are you okay, good?
No. No, I've worked in many shops that offered both, but typically they're either specialized in water-based or plastisol, and maybe dabbled in a bit of discharge here and there for those soft hand feel prints. But no, we're plastisol pretty much exclusive. I don't really muck about with water-based. I think it's got a great application on tea towels, on kids' uniforms, things that might be ironed or you want that softer feel. But we don't have that application come up very often, that we would be losing money if we didn't do it. So we just don't. So it's pretty
Yeah.
much exclusively plastisol. Yeah.
And what would your ink brand of choice be?
We use Wilflex, yeah.
Okay.
Thinking of transitioning to the Rio ink mixing system, but currently we're on Epic PF. So I'm always hesitant to change things when we've got it all dialed. That's me just
Yeah.
being a control freak. But it's also about repeatability. Like I think 80% of our clients to 70% of our customers are repeat customers that don't always repeat the old print, but they'll be expecting a similar Pantone color they've used before. And
Mm.
that is repeatable with our ink mixing system, and even just tinting it up and knowing that it needs a bit more white or a bit more mixing yellow. But yeah, Wilflex Epic PF is our go-to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful standard white.
Mm.
We have experimented with a few other Wilflex inks lately. They sent us some different samples, and I said to the guys, "Hey, give these a go and give me some feedback." And in the end, they went, "Yeah, can we go back to Epic?" We
Yeah.
do use Rutland as well,
Yeah. It's very
and we
popular.
use the Rutland ink matching, for Pantone's
Mhm.
system. Yeah, and look, we have had some issues with white lately with them, and
Yeah.
there seems to be some kind of hubbub in the community about what's going on, and I'm not
Mm.
entirely sure how factual all that stuff is, but
Mm.
um, it's been reliable for us. We like both of them. We
Nice.
tend not to use water base.
Mm.
It's just too hard, to be honest, and
Yeah.
I don't think people generally appreciate it. If someone asks for it, we probably will,
Mm.
but generally we stick to plastisol. So in terms of print job types, obviously you're largely in the branded clothing market, but are there any particular print jobs you like best? Like, do you like don't say a black print on a white garment. We all love those as shop owners, but
No.
you know, like for me, it's simulated process. I just drool over those kind of jobs. Would that be the same for you or something else?
Yeah, absolutely. They come with their own challenges, but the results are so satisfying, especially when the customer has the reaction you would hope for, which is like, wow, like it looks so great, in the sense that they didn't know if it was going to translate onto fabric.
Yeah,
Some of them don't
yeah,
understand the process and how many screens you remade to really get that halftone dialed in, or changing meshes and stuff to kind of find the sweet spot for the image, what the image deserves, the artwork. But yeah, definitely simulated process. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. You mentioned earlier about having an 8-year-old tea and kind of using it as a sales pitch in a way for a
Mhm.
customer that walks in. Is most of your custom walk-in custom, or I know you said you use MailChimp, but how do you
Yeah.
generally drum up your business?
We never. That's not right. That's not true. We typically have never advertised. I built the entire business off Instagram and posting what we did and the cool brands we work with. And not every job that comes in the door is an exciting, cool brand. Sometimes it's just a plumber's business, which is it's exciting for them to get their t-shirts. And sometimes it's companies that are looking for someone to illustrate artwork for them. Now, I love illustration, but the time that I have to throw into that as a business owner is not possible. So um, sometimes it's not worth it or possible. So we have a network of artists we connect people to. They tell me what they're thinking of, and I'm like, I've got the guy you should go see. They've got their own rates, but once they've finished designing your artwork, they'll know how to design it for us, and we can use it for print. And we've had some great results with stuff like that. So I think having a network of people that have seen what we do on Instagram, which we've been really slack on. I've been really slack on Instagram this year, just because it's been one of those years that I'm trying to make myself redundant, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And I'm working too much, but that's part of running a business. Like you said, when things fall down, you're the one that has to make it come to where it needs to be. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I built the business off Instagram. We do a little bit of advertising. We get some, it's very rare someone will walk in that hasn't already called us and made an appointment. And I think that's because we're in the outer suburbs. When we were in a city, so when I first started Born and Thread, and having a standalone space outside of my apartment in Richmond, it was inner city Kensington, which is very close to the city hub. And we got a lot of walk-ins just purely because it was easy to access, lots of inner city youthful people wanting to start a brand and had seen us on Instagram. I'll just drop in and have a chat to this guy, which was a little bit disruptive, but I loved it also. I miss a bit of that walk-in kind of excitement, kind of this could be a cool idea from this guy. But now that we're out in the suburbs, about 30 minutes from the city and in a bit of an industrial area in Ringwood, we don't get so many walk-ins, but people still seem to find us, which is awesome. But yeah, mostly I think our business is built on word of mouth and what they see online.
And you're also distributing across Australia. It's not just in the Melbourne area.
Yeah. We tend to find, like, for example, we'll print for a brewery and they might be in a small regional Victoria or New South Wales town. And they'll tell all their mates this amazing merch they got. And that's not me blowing my horn. I just mean like they're really impressed with the AS color quality because they've maybe never had that kind of shirt before. They've gone to gigs and brought a Gildan tee and it's fallen apart maybe a year or two later. But and then we tend to have all their friends coming to us for prints, which is like awesome. So that seems to be the way that I think we get pigeonholed for beer breweries and all these different little shops that find us, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so your product is actually doing the marketing for you, really, in those types
Pretty
of
much. AS Color makes us look good. Yeah, we just have to put a good print down. So
yeah, which is important. And do you plan to kind of move into other markets as well, or do you just take what comes? I mean, obviously you've got your kind of mainstay around clothing brands, but do you say I want to go into the cafe market or anything like that?
Well, we started with just apparel brands, and they typically have the most interesting because they plan seasonal releases because they have all these cool themings. And some brands are based around cars, which I'm an ex-mechanic, so I'm always anything car related. I'm very excited to be
Yeah.
involved with print. Um, but no, we already kind of do cafes, small businesses, restaurants, sporting events. We do national events that go around the country that are on display, and they need merch at every one of the stops during the year. And bands. We don't do a lot of bands, but we get some of that. There's lots of band merch printers in Melbourne, so I think they've kind of captured that market. But yeah, no, I think one of the things we're going to expand into, which is something exciting for me, which is why I've been working so hard on this redundancy system. I've recorded video tutorials on how to run the business. Is I really want to get into stock holding and drop shipping for clients. So not print, yeah, not print on demand. So one gap I've noticed, a bottleneck for my customers, we can print 3 or 4 different designs for a release in spring, summer, winter, whatever. And then they come down with their car and they're like, how many boxes are there? Like if there's hoodies, you got 12 to 15 to a box. And they've just printed 100 hoodies and they're just like, how am I going to get this home? You know, they might live locally, but it's just a nightmare for them. And I've noticed that when I've floated the question, or I've been asked a few times, would you guys hold it and ship it for me? That's been an interesting idea. I dived in a year ago and we've actually set it all up. We've got all our pricing and structure and how we run it. So next year when we move, I'm going to have a dedicated area for apparel brands that their business has grown more than a hobby on the weekend or after hours, like where instead of it taking up half their house and trying to manage their own inventory, we can do it for them. So that's something I'm expanding into. Yeah.
So you're printing the whole order, stocking it, and then doing the shipping for them.
Yeah.
The final fulfillment, the delivery fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah. And giving them a weekly or monthly report on their stock levels. So we'll set flag falls based on how quickly their stuff sells. So we can go, hey, this design that you printed 100 of is down to 20. That'll basically wipe itself out in a week. You should probably place an order so we can run some more.
That's a great business model. Yeah. I like that. So you're not doing any direct to garment or any direct to film or anything? No.
No.
Pleased to hear that.
Yeah. So there is still that element of risk for them, but we find about half of our apparel brands or a third will do pre-order sales. Well, they'll get us to do an accurate mock-up where we'll take the photos from AS Color and actually render the garment with an accurately sized mock-up in the correct position. Like yourself, you probably receive a lot of mock-ups made by a client where the pocket print's up here and the back print's like stretching across. Yeah. And you're just like, yep, okay. And then when we go to print it, you know, their customers might be like, oh man, that's very different to the image I saw. So part of our service for pre-sales is we'll actually do accurate renders for them in whatever like dimensions they need for their web store or Instagram so that they can get the same product when it's finished. So so we get a whole bunch of people pre-sailing and we get a big chunk of them already know that they'll get sales because they're established and they will print a certain batch and know that a big chunk of them will sell. So doing the printing and stock holding and dispatching it for them, I think just takes that offering of supporting apparel brands to the next level for those that want it. That's the next step.
Yeah. And it allows you to avoid the kind of nightmare fulfillment of doing direct to garment or direct to film, you know, single prints. It's just, I can't understand it in a way. Like I get it in terms of fulfillment, but how the market continues to sort of boast about, you know, how great it is, forgetting, you know, the issues around quality of the actual print, the fact that some of them are just, you know, ostensibly this color, almost color vinyl heat press, you know, some of the direct to film stuff is. But the economics of it just, you know, drives me bonkers listening to those discussions that people have about them.
Yeah, I've had the same kind of discussions, and we had a DTG printer for a very short time that we got secondhand from a screen print shop that was basically done with it. They tried it and didn't like it, and they were selling it really cheap. And we got asked so often for under 20, which is our minimum for a single color print, or up to 4 colors, for just one-offs here and there. And I was sending it to other companies. I always try and have a solution for people. That's not my solution, but try these guys, they offer DTG, or try these guys, they do, one-off embroidery. And yeah, we got the DTG machine in, and it was interesting, but I just felt the upkeep and maintenance on it, the cost of the inks, the quality. Like, I was printing shirts for myself and just fun joke t-shirts to wear, that something you kind of do with screen printing, but you don't, because there's a lot of time involved in shooting a screen and doing all that. So that was fun, but the quality wasn't there for me. And this wasn't an old machine. It was just a few years old. And I was like, man, this technology is not where it needs to be. And people are, like you have had happen, where people are boasting about how great this whole print fulfillment system is. And it's like, it's not. My wife got a jumper a few years back, or maybe a year back, actually, a year and a half ago. It was a Kath and Kim jumper, this funny little picture from Kath and Kim on a hoodie, on a pale pink hoodie. And it was DTG. And I said to her, you love that jumper, but the first time you watch it, you're going to have a massive saturation loss. And I said, like, probably close to 30 or 50% of the color is going to wash out. And it did. And the print's broken down, and now it's just got little chunks of the print left, and she's devastated, but she's asked me, oh, do you think you could recreate it as a screen print? And she knows it's a massive amount of time to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I know you really love that jumper, but no, I'd probably get you a digital transfer or something. But even that has its limitations on quality. But so no, the idea behind the print stock holding and then dispatch is to really hold true to screen printing as the top tier, I think, still, which is why it's still around, application for garment printing, and then offering a final solution. But yes, DTG, DTF seems to be exploding at the moment. I mean, originally it was super color transfers that everyone was using, and now they've all got their own DTF machines and showing videos. I've seen sponsored Instagram posts and stuff where they're like rubbing it on concrete, and saying, look how durable it is. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, that's interesting. It's just,
there's a good podcast out this week by Printavo. I don't know if you listen to their podcast.
No.
It's a good commercial oriented podcast, I think.
I'll check it out.
But yeah, Stephen Ferris from Campus Inc., I think is his company, did this kind of expose on the direct-to-film market, because everyone's going on about it. And basically, they've obviously spent a bit of cash, and tried the bigger systems out. The first one, they just took it back. They just they really tried. They replaced most of the parts. Second one, similar kind of experience. And the third one, they feel like they landed with something, but there's so much wastage. It's only useful for certain circumstances. So yeah, I feel the same way. And it's kind of like, it's the sort, for me, it's like the second law of thermodynamics in a way. Like, if you move away from the kind of true positive real ink situation to something that's, a lower grade kind of tech, maybe a higher grade technology, but a lower grade output, it's not going to work in the same way. And it's funny, we get people in here, I'm sure you have the same thing, and because we're in a smaller town, we tend not to get too many walk-ins, and we kind of don't want it in a way. And we'll get someone come in, they'll have a full color photo or something, and they'll say, I want that printed on 3 t-shirts, just like you, our minimum's 20. And I say to them, you see that machine there, that uses real ink. It's, it's like watery ink, we use plastisol, but it actually gets lit. And they were like, oh yeah, they just don't get that.
No.
But it's and I say, but this stuff's the best, but we can't do 3 shirts.
No.
So I guess it does have its place,
Yeah, I remember when DTG started coming to the forefront, and nearly every print shop around me I knew was getting one. And they were all saying, oh, it's going to replace screen printing. And then you look at the output and pre-press, like getting the, what do they call it? The stuff you put down first on the shirt. I forget the name of it.
The pre-treatment.
Pre-treatment, sorry. Yes, the pre-treatment on the garments. Just that whole process looked like a nightmare to me. And I'm like, how many shirts are you putting out an hour? Oh, I've got 3 machines and I can put out 15, 20 shirts an hour. Like, forget that. Like, what? Yeah, but I sell each shirt for $35. I'm like, yeah, because you're doing 2 or 3. You're basically selling to retail. You're not doing
Yeah,
a
that's right.
consumer, like you're selling direct to consumer, not someone building a brand. Because someone building a brand can't sell that shirt on when it's costing them $35 and make any money. So it's like, to me, I was like, this is never going to go anywhere. And I mean, like you said, it's got its place. If someone needs a one-off photo print of their dog that just passed, well, yeah, that's an effective way to get a one-off T-shirt, but it's
Yeah.
not for production, no.
No, and anything that interrupts, if one of our major issues is always going to be staff, right,
Mm,
which it is,
mm.
anything that interrupts the money earning aspect, it's
Yeah,
just not,
not
it's
worth
just
it.
not worth doing. Hey, look, but would you, if you had a new brand come on, hey, I want to start a clothing brand, and of course, it's
Mhm.
quite. I find that really disturbing when someone comes on. I'm just
Oh,
starting a
really?
clothing brand. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I just panic because I think, okay, what have they been told? First of all,
yep,
they're going to come up with some cookie idea with no actual brand, maybe even
yeah.
just a design, but no real story around what they're doing, and they're going to be millionaires by Christmas, kind of thing.
That's what they
Um,
think. Yeah,
we sometimes, because I never thought about the stockpiling thing. What should we call that? Stockpiling fulfillment almost, or
yeah,
stockpiling delivery? There must be some language
yeah.
around that.
Stock holding and dispatch. Yeah,
Stockholding and dispatch.
yeah,
Um, we sometimes try to get people. We just had one in Darwin, I think he was, and he had 50 designs, and I said, look, mate, and they're black on white t-shirt, and I said, look, there's this thing called plastisol heat transfers. Oh, no, I don't like transfers. Or let me try and explain a bit more. We do try and push those kind of early starters where it's simple prints into
yeah.
that model. Would that be something you do? Like, do you offer plastisol heat transfers as a general service?
No, not at all. Not even for inside necks, or we even print inside necks.
Yeah,
I mean, we probably shouldn't, but we do because we have more control over it. But
it's a lot quicker.
yeah. So yes, we do get a lot of people walking in, and it's something that once I've set up the stock holding and dispatch physically, not just all the pricing and the structure that I've built around it so far. We've got probably 8 or 10 of our clients that want to jump on it as soon as we've got the space to hold their stock. So
Yep.
they're very excited about next year. But I think something that I've been working on, which is I don't believe in any secret squirrel stuff. I think there's enough people that think they hold the information close to their chest, so I'm not afraid to share it. But something I'm really excited about working on once all that's set up next year is print consultation. So, and actually building a course. So, with the screen recording stuff I've been doing, I want to screen record. This is how you plan your first release. This is how you design your
Oh,
artwork
geez.
in
Yeah,
Illustrator or Photoshop. How to set
yeah,
up your
great idea.
artboard scaled and your DPI correctly. What effects to be wary of that won't translate the screen printing. How to make your own pre-sale images accurately placed in positions that screen printers can actually use. And the idea of the course isn't to necessarily drive people to come use us, but to educate them. Because, like what you were just talking about, you get somebody in and they've got 50 designs and they think they got all these cool ideas they've never seen before. And you're like, I'm really sorry. There's a reason why you don't see from one shoulder to the other shoulder screen prints because it's near impossible to execute correctly without it looking like absolute rubbish. But yeah, cool idea. Wraparound prints, stuff like that I'm sure you get sent every second week. But yeah, so that we do a lot of educating new clients, and we try to fairly efficient at it these days because of all the walk-ins and because we're known as an apparel screen printer. But for people starting their own mini brand. But I think yeah, building this course will help me educate them. But yes, to answer your question, sorry, I keep getting off track.
No, no, it's great.
To answer your question, we typically recommend clients to have 2 to 3 designs to launch with. Maybe have one that's got 2 or 3 colors and a couple others that are simple. And we show them that, like, if you did a white color design, you can actually use AS Colors like awesome color range to emphasize that. Do some black tees because black tees will always sell, but then maybe do some, the new cypress green color they've released or this new blue that they've released.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be quite hot, keeps selling out. So maybe kind of guide them to some colors that might help them. And we tell them this is really just to minimize your risk. Not that you don't have these amazing designs, but if you're going to do a 6 or an 8 color print, we're going to do 50 minimum. You get your screen setups for each one of those colors. And if it doesn't land as well as you thought, you're going to financially be out of a lot of pocket. So use these first simple designs and your first release, and maybe don't do all the extra trimmings like custom neck labels and swing tags and folding and bagging and a sticker in each bag and a thank you card. You know, maybe don't launch with everything, just maybe launch your designs, simplify. And once you've made your money back on that, you'll be in a position to then take some risk because you've doubled your money on what you put in at the start.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you really got the angle and the right consulting model in terms of offering that kind of advice. I mean, I think that actually will be a really good marketing thing. I know you say it's not really to drive business, but you know, if you can give someone a confidence in what you do, and also one of the things I've learned a little bit about in this business is holding people's hands through the process.
Absolutely.
Because you get a customer who's been lumped with the job of getting the t-shirts and hasn't got a clue and is overwhelmed. And I find if you can just sort of talk them through and help them understand and manage their expectations, they tend to go for it a bit more. But that sounds like a real, I'm not, sign me up, you know, like that sounds like something I could really learn and benefit from. So you print neck labels on the press. I'm pleased to hear that. We do both, but it's really down to the size of the order. And obviously, if you do a plastisol transfer and press it, it is lovely and smooth, but it looks kind of shiny. It doesn't look quite right to me.
Doesn't look the same as a print. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Do you, and you may not want to comment on this, which would be fine, do you ever have any kind of real nightmare customers who, you know, have the, you know, stratospheric idea about expectation on quality or on what's possible? How do you deal with those types of customers that, you know, maybe you've printed and the neck label's too big, or I don't know, the image is too big, or something's not quite right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So part of that hand holding you talk about, typically our hardest customers are ones that have been burnt before, like I was at the start, where I had a terrible screen printer deliver this subpar job and didn't communicate anything. And I just felt like at the end of it, like I got a really poor result and didn't understand if this was the standard or if this was. So typically the ones that don't seem to trust in our output, and like our showroom's full of like probably 350 print samples, from simulated process to glow in the dark to puff to, we use a really cool ink called Crystallina, which is an overlay ink. It puts like a turtle shell texture and color. You should check that out. It's 4 times as expensive as any other ink, but it's a really cool effect. It's basically suspended in like a clear polymer gel. And so when you print it, if you print it over the top of a color, like yellow, for example, it'll make that yellow look metallic, but not like a gold metallic. It just gives it like a turtle shell reflective metallic look, and super cool. So we got all these cool samples in our showroom, like glow in the dark, stuff like that. And it's just like, if they can't get to us and they can't see and be shown what a job sheet looks like, and that we count everything off, and that there's this whole process for making sure that what's in the box is what they asked for, and it's all signed off by whoever counted it. Typically our worst customers are the ones that have been burnt before. And once they've gone through the process once, normally they're okay, and we've got them for life normally. But there has been instances, and I'm not afraid to comment on it, where we've had a client that just had unreasonable expectations every time, to the point where they were measuring our back prints and being like, this print isn't 120 mil gap, it's 121.5, and getting upset and having to explain to them, like, we're not like, this isn't like, we're not Tesla's battery factory here. We're not a gigafactory. This is a hand manual, you know, artisan almost process where, you know, each shirt is manually loaded. And I just think that you need to have some reasonable kind of expectations there. And after 5 or so jobs of every job him finding something to ask for a credit or a freebie next time, I just got to the point where I said to them politely, like, we have really high standards here, and I'm really disappointed we're not meeting them for you. I've spent years building this business around delivering a really good product and managing expectations of what is possible, I think, and what we do and what's possible in the industry. So I'm sorry we don't meet those standards, but yeah, I think maybe you should find another printer and see if someone can meet them, because I don't think we can. And that's either met with like disdain and upset, and they probably don't like being rejected and just want to kind of lash out, or sometimes they're just like, really? And you're like, yeah, I can't put effort and work into you when I've got clients that appreciate what we do. So I just try to be honest is the short version. Yeah.
Would you blacklist them? Like if they came
Yeah.
back on? Yeah.
Yep. We have, because we have this massive network of clients that want to work with us week in, week out, that are our repeats. And then we've got new clients that we're excited to work with because they seem like a good fit for us. Not everyone's a good fit. So yeah, we try to notice that early and try to help people that we think will be a good fit, and not as in work within our process, but work within reasonable expectations. Because some people, yeah, just don't understand the process. Like you said, that they don't understand that it's an ink that you basically squeeze through a screen with a very fine-tuned process to get this amazing result, at the end of the day. So yeah, that's what I think. Something we've really benefited from is having open days where
okay, that's interesting.
yeah, I mean, I didn't do any this year, and we haven't really done any since COVID. Like, I mean, yesterday for our anniversary party, people were able to come over to our print factory and see us printing jobs. Normally on an open day, we're actually printing a t-shirt where they can go up to a pile of blank shirts on a table and be like, yeah, I'll take the burgundy extra large, and then we'll take it over to the press, and they'll watch their shirt get printed. And
nice.
and when it comes out of the oven, you lift it up, give it a flick, and go, here you go, here's your shirt, and it just blows their mind. But
really
prior to that, we'll walk them through the screen making process and how to mix a Pantone, and and our little UV light system. So we've got a proper LED daylight light above our ink mixing area. So when we're looking through the Pantone swatch book, at the back of the book, there's that little light indicator to make sure that you're actually accurately looking at the color correctly. And I think once they see the whole process, they're just like, it really helps them appreciate how much work goes into before the ink's on the garment, and all the things that we catch prior to that to stop a problem. So open days have been really good for educating customers. Typically, they're all existing customers, but then they have a new appreciation for the work you do. But sometimes there are newbies that come along that haven't printed with you before, that you can really impress them in the sense that, yeah, this is a process that isn't as simple as you might think.
Can I just ask you about that Crystallina? Is that a Wilfex ink? Sorry to go back to
no, it's a Union ink, I think, from memory.
Union ink. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. And you'd run that through an open mesh 39T,
32T. Yeah, it's very chunky. And it, obviously you can have bleeding issues with it if you're going too heavy. But yeah, it's just an overprint. Like, you can print it direct to fabric. We've got 3 samples in our showroom. We've got it on a black t-shirt directly, a white t-shirt directly, and then on a t-shirt that has a 3-color print, a white base, a yellow, and then a black key line, and it's just on the yellow, on top of the yellow. So when you print it direct to black, it ends up looking very orangey, like almost like a coppery speckle fleck. And when you print it on white, it ends up looking very, basically almost mimics the color it's under, but has its own reflective. If you think of a seashell, it's got that turtle shell effect, that little shimmer. That's what it's got. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff, but really expensive, but you should check it out. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's a nice add-on.
Super excited just to learn about it. And definitely going to go and check that out. Let's think of if you're going okay for time.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got all the time. It's all good. Yeah.
Wanted to ask you about the business side of it a little more. You've got a plan to be into new premises mid next year. You're currently running out of 2 sites, but directly opposite, I think you'd said, in the same complex. How do you do that actually? Do you run one press in one, or like how does that work out?
Yeah, great question. So it was kind of something that we got so busy during COVID, and things died really. I don't know if this happened for you, but when in that March, when all the announcements started happening, especially in Melbourne, event work dried up overnight. I think we returned like $30,000 worth of stock back to AS Color and paid the restocking fees, because we just had that many clients cancel their events because their events were just done overnight. So, and we had about a month's worth of print work built up. about a week of it disappeared, and then the next 3 weeks we were printing and there was just nothing coming in. Everyone was just like, what's going to happen? Is the state shutting down? Is the city shutting down? It was very like, probably like everyone, you look back now and be like, oh, it wasn't as big a deal as we thought, but it overnight things stopped. And then after a month, we got to a point where it was back to full production again, which we were very lucky. After 2 months, we were busier than we'd ever been. And I think that had a lot to do with, when I look back, I think it had a lot to do with people typically maybe starting a brand and trying to get some stuff out of China. China's lead times have come down massively. Like 10 years ago when I started this, you'd be talking 16 or 12 weeks to get something out of China. And maybe 4 or 6 weeks prior to that to get a sample, and then hope the stuff that was coming was going to be the same, which we saw brands doing that and kind of rolling the dice. And you're like, wow, I wouldn't do it, but power to you. So I think with the whole COVID thing shutting down a lot of these countries, the globe, people were just looking for locally. And I think also people that had always wanted to start a brand had time off work because everyone was just at home. So we just had this influx of work. And it got to a point where we were tripping over boxes. If WorkSafe had come out, we would have been over the ringer because there was just no space for anybody to move. And rather than move the business during COVID, which seems like a massive risk because I didn't know what was going to happen, there was a space across the road that was available. It was full of solar panels, but a single phase inverter. So we put a 3-phase inverter in. We put all LED lights, roof lights, hanging lights from the roof over our print areas, and did all the electrical work 10 or 15 grand later. And we set up that as our print production factory. So that's where all the printing happens. And what would be the showroom over there or the office over there is our staff room. And we do all our relabeling in house. So that's our sewing room. So we handle all of that internally. So that's our sewing room. And then all our ink and ink mixing's over there, and where we obviously fold and lay up every job and box it. But our current factory is stock holding. So this is where we store all the stock when it comes from AS Color. It's where our showroom is, and it's where our dark room still is because we'd already invested in building that there. So, and where our film printer is. So yeah, it's split between 2 parts of production.
Okay, wow. You sew your own labels. You wouldn't get AS Color to do that?
We used to, at the very start, we used to, but it was a bottleneck problem because someone would place an order, we'd produce the labels, which would take a week or 2, silk neck labels or woven damask labels, and then we'd send them to AS Color with a very detailed job sheet, which they had their own template for that, saying, sew them in here, and put a pip tag on the sleeve of the shirt or whatever, and so that would take them between another 2 or 3 weeks to do that. Yeah. So we'd be at 5 weeks before we could get a garment on the press. And it was just such a long lead time that we just found clients, contacting us 3 or 4 weeks in being like, are they ready yet? And we'd already told them it was going to take them 5 weeks before we'd get them back. But it was just, so the advantage of bringing it in-house was massive for us because we went from a 6-week turnaround for a finished garment printed after it had been relabeled to order the garments, print them. As soon as they're printed within that 1 or 2 week period based on our print schedule, relabel them straight away, done. 2.5 weeks. So we cut it down to nearly a third. And that was a big game changer for us, solving that problem.
So where do you get the labels done? Are you getting them done overseas or here?
No, here in Australia. Yeah, Australian supplier out of New South Wales. They produce all our labels for us. And something I want to bring in-house at some point. It might be more of a headache than it's worth, but currently I'm investigating that. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you do any embroidery anyway?
No, we do offer embroidery. Yes, that's not true. We do offer embroidery, and we do that through an embroidery partner that doesn't deal with the public. They pretty much exclusively do wholesale embroidery for printers, or for big event suppliers and stuff like that. And they work with us, I think, because we're quite detail orientated and we give them very clear instructions. We know the limitations of embroidery. I've been doing this for a little while. So we typically don't send them a problem job. I think there's been one job in 2 years that they've been like, damn, we can't, this is too much detail, or this is going to be a problem with the style of stitch pattern. So yeah, but I want to bring that in-house, and that's part of getting a bigger space, get an 8-head embroidery machine and be able to handle all that in-house.
If you've got 10 years, you've got more than 10 years in the screen print industry, but 10 years in the company, horn and thread. But if you were to start again, knowing what you now know, from that point where you leave your apartment, right, and you move into your factory, what do you think you'd do differently?
I would have got a bigger space from the very start. I've probably spent 100 grand on setting up different factories easily, which is part of the learning process. If I do it differently, I would probably be less conservative and be a little more back yourself, and just probably would have got a 300 or 400 square meter factory from the start, because in the long term it would have played out super beneficial. There'd be a lot more of that equipment that I'm waiting to buy just based on not setting up new factories that could have happened. So, because I reinvest everything back in the business, even being a car guy, and a lot of my life when I was younger, I have many car friends from Brisbane before I moved to Melbourne that I had a different car every 6 months. That was my life, was my world, was building and driving and playing with cars. And since moving to Melbourne, I've had 2 cars that I've played with, and well, that's fun. I've probably got 10 or 15 grand into them, so it's not a lot of money. But I just think that for me, I'm very focused on building this business into something I'm really proud of, and my staff enjoy working there, so we're orientated on making it somewhere fun. We've got a really good retention of staff, I think, because of that. But yeah, I think what I
How do
would
you
do
do
different
that,
is,
Dan? How do you, sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
how do you make it fun? You know, I'm not saying our place isn't fun, but I can
no,
always learn, new
ah,
things about how to get that right.
yeah, okay. Well, once a month we used to go down to a little RSL club at the end of our street and do a pub lunch or something. And while that would be very unproductive for production and 100% time off the machine and making no money for a few hours, I think that gave something back to the staff.
Okay.
And we in the office we run tunes. In the print factory they have different days for different tunes for people to experience their own music. But I guess it's probably not tolerating any kind of toxicity. Like, even in the interview process, if there's any hints of them being a little bit egotistical, like, we just don't have room for it. Like, even, and there seems to be a lot of toxicity in the industry that I worked in prior to running my own shop. I found there was always a us and them, people in the office versus the screen printers. They felt like we're the ones that make the money, you're just the monkeys that type and separate the artwork. And we have none of that. And I've experienced that at a couple of shops I've worked at. So I think that helps. Everyone's on the same team. We don't do like big team meetings or any kind of stuff like that, but we definitely try to all be on the same page, working towards the same goals. But yeah, so that RSL club thing was a nice way to give back when we had a killer month and everyone had been really, working hard. But when COVID hit, we couldn't do that. Melbourne was in a hard lockdown. I had to issue, workers permits for them to drive more than 5Ks away from their house. It got ridiculous. But it got ridiculous. I understand why they did it. I'm not going to comment on the whole how it was managed. That's not something I don't actually have that much of a problem with it. But I just mean as in, I look back now and be like, wow, you couldn't go further than 5Ks of your house, 1 hour outside a day. It was challenging, especially for my wife with a newborn child. It's not what she expected for her maternity leave. But I talked to the staff after a few months, and we were so busy and everyone was working so hard, and we were adding more staff and added the second factory, and just felt like things were rapidly expanding. I had a chat with the staff and I was like, hey, I got this idea. I think it could be a good idea, but I don't want to be that boss that just implements things and you guys go, why wouldn't he ask us? That's a terrible idea. Directly affects them. So I said, I'm thinking about getting a barbecue and doing a barbecue Monday. So you guys can pick what we cook on the barbecue each week. A different person gets to pick. And on a Monday, we also don't bring in lunch. You can bring in a few things for the barbecue once we've picked it. So they got a little pencil case full of all these ideas for the barbecue, and we just get our cook on every Monday. And we've cooked some ridiculous stuff on there that when they tell me what they've decided, I'm like, oh, how am I going to cook that on a barbecue? But okay,
You do the cooking.
Yeah, so that I think has been a really good game changer. They call it, they seem to call it like, let's make Mondays suck less. Like the Monday barbecue gets everyone excited to start the week. So that's something that might help morale. I don't know, stuff like that.
It's a great idea. We do kind of pizza nights here. We do a Christmas lunch. We do a Christmas lunch every year. but
Yeah.
you know, you kind of expect that, really. At least I hope people expect that. So yeah, I think I like the barbecue idea, and we're in a kind of industrial complex here, and the people right next to us, actually one of our customers, but they're a Keep Fit. It's not called Keep Fit anymore, is it? But showing my age, but they're, you know, one of those amazing gyms, and they get a barbecue on quite often and get that going. And next to them is a brewery, and they
Oh,
quite
wow.
often have something going. Yeah, they're about to move, actually, sadly, to bigger premises. But yeah, and then there's a fruiterer here and an electrician, and you know, all the usual kind of people, I guess. But yeah, that's a good idea. I might run that past the team and see what they make of that in the new year, and maybe give that a go. Have you ever had to let anyone go or fire anyone in 10 years?
Sadly, yeah, a couple of times actually, especially when finding screen printers. We get some screen printers that we would always get them in to have a chat, and then generally just get them on the press to register a 2 or 3 color print, get them to do a test print, like a strike off, just to see if they could pull a squeegee like they said they could, because some people like to pretend, I guess is the word, saying it nicely. And that's a good way to just eliminate that before you've gone to the effort of cancelling your ad and getting them in and giving them a contract and then going, oh my God. So I learned that the hard way once. So yeah, no, I have had to let a couple of people go, and it was heartbreaking. One of them was a really good person, but just was not able to fit. I guess my attitude, especially coming from some major companies and being a manager, is I don't do metrics. Like, I don't monitor how long their lunch breaks are. I don't monitor how many prints they're getting out per hour. Like, within reason, there's expectations, but there's not like, why didn't you do 150 this hour? This hour you did 200. Like, it's that kind of stuff's ridiculous. But I think what I do offer is I try to say, don't think you're hitting the mark for us, like quality control, or you're not hitting the mark for output, or you're not hitting the mark for mixing with the rest of the crew. Like, what's going on and what can I give you to get you there? Like, try to solve the problem for them. And after 3 or 4 times of giving them everything that they need to get there and they still can't get there, I try to be like almost self-selection and be like, you know, do you think you're the right fit here? I don't know what else I can give you. Have you got anything else you need? When they run out of things that you can give them to help them get there and they realize they can't get there, often it's kind of a very simple, yeah, I'm sorry, mate, I don't think this is going to work. So,
yeah, okay. It's a nice way of managing it out.
Yeah.
Striking them off. Yeah.
Oh, I invest in the person. Like, mistakes are always going to happen, and even now with the new person we put on earlier this year, she's had a heap of mistakes that have made her devastated. But I'm like, you're only making these mistakes once. Like, I'm invested in you. If you're making those mistakes 10 times over and over again, then you just don't care. That's a different thing. So, yeah.
I think that's critical with staff, to be able to get them to understand that it's okay to stuff up.
Absolutely.
You know, but stuffing up too many times, we need to kind of take a look at this. Why is this happening? What's going on? We do have, I won't mention any names, we do have one guy who's one of the part-time team who's just a beautiful man, from overseas. He's a PhD student here, and he's, you know, he's a great worker. He's got a great work ethic, but he cannot stop popping screens when he's reclaiming them. And it's such a mystery. Yeah, like, how do you do it, you know? And we keep saying, well, why is this happening? And he's lovely. He's very gracious, and he'll say, oh, maybe it's an old screen, and we remesh our screens fairly regular. That's something that you'll do more often when you have an auto, because you don't have the same control as you do on a manual. No, they're not that, you know. And we, to this day, you know, he's popped more screens in a year than we've done in 10 or 5 or whatever, you know. But yeah, we just have to kind of get there with him. I think he's getting better. But yeah, I think that key, you know, work is work, isn't it? At the end of the day, you sweat. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, well, I guess there are some easier jobs than others, but it is a toil of some kind. And making people's life worth coming to work, you know, bearable, or helping them to become happier as workers amongst their peers. You know, those things are really, really valuable, especially in this day when there's a lot more depression around.
Absolutely.
There's recessions coming. There's all sorts of problems. To try and make them feel loved and grow them, I think is critical.
Yeah, I want to add to it. I feel like I cheapened it by saying that we just do a barbecue every Monday and that's what makes them enjoy their job, because like that's obviously a benefit, but it's not probably why. I want to expand on it if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Um, being detail orientated, which you might have found yourself being process orientated and critically wanting to put out a great product and controlling that process, especially when you started it on your own. It was very hard early on to like let stuff just be, that's their job now and that's how they do it. And that's, you know, they understand what I'm expecting, but they're managing it their own way. And I found it really hard at first to let them own it and not micromanage it. And I very quickly knew how that had a detriment to their own attitude and what they felt about what they were doing. So I think over the last 6 or 7 years, once I brought on that staff member 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I felt like I really need to work around this. And so my big thing now is like, we don't do things just because I say. I explain why we do it a certain way. And then I always tell them, if something doesn't make sense to you because you're doing this every day, day in, day out, or there's a better way or you want to try something, let me know and I'll support you, get what you need, buy a new little thing, you know. And I like to let them own it and let them feel like it's theirs. And I think that's probably a big part of job satisfaction, and not with any kind of wanky kind of like, oh, I let them own the job. Like it's
Sure.
I let them feel like they can do it the way they do it. And even if I watch and be like, okay, it's not necessarily how I would do it, their output and their satisfaction is what they're getting out of that. So I think that's really important. And maybe that helps them feel like they're valued in their job, because they are. They're doing it their own way and it works. So yeah.
Yeah, and often it's better than the way that we think,
Exactly.
needs to be done. And I guess, one of the things about starting a business is the cost and the idea. Yeah, the cost of investment in terms of one's time, one's money, one's thinking. The absorption on thinking is inordinate on a business, but then the ratio, the link between that and the idea of success. Am I going to be able to keep going as success? Are we going to expand? Am I going to earn some money? And because of that, I think there's a huge tax on people that start business to do it right and get it right. And there are these tiny nuances that we make, particularly in screen printing, it seems, where if it's not done that way, by the time we get to over here, it's not going to work. But actually, often some of that's a bit unnecessary, right? Like if you think about trying to resolve a problem, right? Like right now, we changed emulsions a few months ago. We've just been, I guess in a way, maybe we've been getting a bit bored, but I actually wanted an emulsion that would reclaim quicker for the reasons that are obvious based on what we said earlier. And a few weeks ago, the person that normally runs the press here came and said, you do realize that these screens stick to the garments. What are you talking about? This is pretty significant. Yeah, she said that it only happens for the first run, but they stick to the emulsion.
So it's pulling it off the pallet.
Yeah.
Oh
it's
no.
Bizarre. Yeah. And I was like, well, this is a commercial emulsion. Like we must be doing something wrong. And we post harden our screens in the sun. But where we live, it often isn't that sunny. I'm quite pleased at the moment because you're in a hoodie. I was on a podcast the other day and I was in the hoodie.
Yeah.
And I think they're in Queensland or somewhere, and
Cold
got the other way around. But yesterday it was like it could have snowed. I mean, it was just so cold, and it was just pouring with rain the whole time and blowing a hoolie. Anyway, the point I'm coming to is, okay, well, this is a problem that needs resolving. So what's wrong? Don't know. Are we post-hardening them too long? Are we not post-hardening them? Were they the ones we did in the middle of the night and didn't bother to put out, because we were under the pump? And that's the problem, right? There's so many of these tiny nuances. Is it that? Is it this? Well, let's try that. No, it's not that. It could be this. Oh, it could be that. There's always something else. And I feel that when we start businesses, we're constantly just looking for the path of least resistance for the best quality output. And that's why we take massive possession of each nuance or each process. And we
Yes.
see someone, I mean, obviously someone's going to blow out a screen when they're reclaiming it. We don't want that. But we want, like you say, we want the person to own it. And I feel like that's of some value. I mean, these are not very interesting anecdotes in a way, but I do remember being a kid and, getting the kind of school job and then the Saturday thing, the summer holidays and what have you. And just having clearly being a dog's body, thinking,
Yeah.
geez, is this what work's like, And even then, at a 15-year-old or whatever I was, if someone had said, how do you think we should do this? I probably would have come up with a stupid idea, but I would have felt valued and, listened to. And I think those things are so important. But yeah, look, I didn't get the idea you weren't doing that just because you're doing your Barbie on
No, yeah, I just wanted to be like,
but,
that's just a fun thing we do. But yeah.
and listen, start the week on a Monday with a Barbie. I want to come to work, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
good.
gonna chat to the staff about it
Yeah.
afterwards.
It sets the tone for a week. I think it's really good. It's not super productive. Like, sometimes everyone overeats and we're all just like, oh man, I wish there was a couch to lie down on. So typically is a 1 o'clock lunch. The printers finish up at 3. Those last 2 hours aren't very productive, but it sets the tone for the week, it sets it up for a good week normally.
Can I ask you, how do you cope with if your minimum order quantity is 20 and then you might get a 50, 100 or 500 or so on, and then you get a biggie, right? So they're similar kind of numbers to what we would do. Typically, on average, we print between 400 and 700 garments a day is our sort of standard. And then we might get a biggie in for 5,000 garments, let's say.
Yep.
And we look at that and we go, well, isn't that great? Because we've got an auto. And, if we get the setup right and we put 4 people supporting the press, we'll kick out 500, 600 an hour. How hard can it be? And there's 2 issues with that come to mind straight away. One is, well, all the other jobs just stop, right? And so you go, yeah, but this is super efficient. Yeah, but those customers are not getting served. And that's a dilemma for us, and we deal with that in a particular way. But the other thing is, it is really efficient. You are making a much better bang for your buck there, or much better buck for your bang, really. How do you kind of deal with that? Like, for example, do you put on longer hours? Do you put on a night shift? Like, how do you cope with those big blockers because of a big order, let's say, that comes in?
Yeah, we get that a fair bit. And the way I get around it is adding that second oven really helped. A second dryer, tunnel dryer, because what we had prior to that is, it's the best way to explain this. We'll dedicate one of the presses to the big job, and the secondary press will be printing the smaller stuff. The problem is with the secondary press, they're kind of getting in the way of the big job. If it's not a high color job and the output's quite fast on a manual, you can get 100 to 200 an hour, depending on what it is, to 30 to 40 an hour if it's a high color, half-tone simulated process. So in that sense, what we do is we typically don't do longer hours. We just build it into the print schedule so that one person is, instead of getting a whole bunch of jobs out in a day, 50, 20, 100, 200 shirt jobs, we'll just have one press. We'll be working for 3 or 4 days on these 2,000 shirts or whatever, which, yes, if I had an order, that'd be done in a day or 2. I need to get one, but it does block up our print schedule. And the second press will be running that smaller stuff that we normally do, so we're not letting down our regular clients, which in sometimes some of these big orders will tie up our printer for a week and a half. And the second carousel will just keep all those little jobs going out, or the regulars going out. The problem we get into is most orders will have a mix of t-shirts and hoodies, and you might have the same thing with your inks, but we cure the hoodies at a lower temperature because we use a different white base, a non-bleed dye migration blocker base, and white, polyblock white, because all the AS color poly is 20 to 30% polyester mix, and that will mean that the t-shirts going through the oven are undercured. So, and we can't stop that big print run while we need to print these 50 hoodies. So now what we'll do is we'll have the second oven on, so that as soon as those t-shirts come out and they've cooled down on the table, they get laid back through again at the correct curing temp. So they're cured
Yeah.
and there's no bank up. So that's how we get around it. We split the
Okay.
jobs and have a secondary oven that our layup staff that are catching the job will know that that job needs to go through an oven again. But
Okay.
that's separate from the production area. It's right next to where they lay up shirts. So
Gotcha.
that's been a game changer for us, for not having stuff on a table banking up, waiting for the oven to be doing t-shirts again for everyone.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
been really good.
That's a really smart way of resolving that problem.
Mm.
Yeah. So I started taking you down a line of thinking, and then I spectacularly digressed.
Okay.
We were talking about your plans. So you're looking for these new premises, 450 meters, etc. What else is on the radar? You talked about an auto earlier on as well, but longer term, I love this. I need to learn this, right? This thing of redundancy, right?
Yes.
Becoming redundant, right?
Yeah.
My wife's on at me about it all the time, and rightly so. How do you aim to get there? What's your strategy to make it happen? Because without a plan, we know nothing will happen, right?
I think if I didn't set a hard date that I'm going to go away for a few weeks and truly not be contactable,
Yeah,
I
wow.
don't think I'd get there. So this time next year, which is a crazy time of year for your business and my business leading up to Christmas busy period, I'm going to go to Japan with my brother, who's an ex-racing driver who raced all over Europe in a GT3 series. And he was a Nissan factory driver in the GT3 endurance races in Europe for 2 years in the Blancpain endurance series. A few years back, he fulfilled our dream as car guys of one of us becoming a race driver, which was amazing.
Fantastic.
And he's got a lot of contacts at Nissan, and there's a big thing in Japan about this time of year. It's just happened a few weeks ago or a week ago, called Nismo Festival. I've been to Japan twice for a couple of trips with my wife, as just us as travel. And with 2 young kids, we haven't really done any big overseas trips until they're a little bit older, and that's manageable. Not because kids aren't manageable, just because it's a massive difference, that kind of holiday, I think, compared to when you're both in your 20s or 30s with no kids doing the same holiday. It's not lost on me that'll be very different. So I'm turning 40 next year, and one of the things I really wanted to do next year was not do a destination birthday or anything like that, but I said to my wife, like, you're going to be upset with me, but I want to go to Japan with my brother and basically do 2 weeks of just car orientated stuff. Both my trips to Japan, I've been to like one race factory that I begged her I had to go to, that I'd seen in a blog of Japan, and begrudgingly she went along with me for a couple of hours to check it out. But so the idea is, yes, in November next year, during our busiest period, I need to have all these processes in place, and not just have all the training and video recordings there, but have the staff able to search it and get what they need easily and feel confident about learning, and not feeling like I got to sit down and watch a 20-minute video and rewind it 50 times to get the nugget of info I need. So I need them to go through it and refine it with me to make sure it's usable. But November next year, I want to take 2 weeks off where I'm not available unless I check an email at 11 o'clock at night and just reply to something that's absolutely catastrophic. I want to be off the radar.
You have just made my day, perhaps not in the way that you think. On Friday, I leave for Korea.
Wow.
And then the UK, and I'm away for 4 weeks. I got to go see my mum. She's unwell in the UK, and catch up with one of my other daughters and her husband there. But it's a good thing, right? In the sense that you hit the nail on the head. I've actually got a plan not to be here, which means I've got to make it work here so that it can survive without me. I'm in a slightly different position in that my business partner is actually one of my daughters.
Oh, wow.
We started the business together, as I said earlier, just out of a hobby, really. I retired from what I was doing. I retired, period, and sold up. And we started this for fun, and here we are now. But the cool thing about it is that she runs out there. And this week, I've been taking things right up to pre-press because they're flat stick, making it happen. And a few other bits and bobs, like I got printed on Saturday, which was hard work. But the point is that she does it. She does it all. Now, this is actually a point of progression because when we started with a cheap Chinese press like yours, although I
Mhm.
think cheaper, so worse. And I almost nearly gave up. And we started with water based. No idea
Oh
what I was
man,
doing.
you
Cam
started the
Irvin was,
hardest way.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just idiot written across my head. And Cam Irvin at the Print Life was like my hero, right? Like he's such a
Yes.
zany character, but he was so helpful and so honest, and a few others. Um, anyway, that's a huge story. Progressed through a few presses, then bought a proper one. And Lydia, her name is. She was the loader and the catcher, and she was the order of stock, and I did
Mm.
everything else. Oh, and eventually she learnt to register, so she
Wow.
would just get the next job ready.
Yeah.
I'd come and off we'd go. And 100 an hour, 5 6 hours a day when you're in your 50s isn't much fun, right? So, but I did it,
Yeah.
and we grew. Anyway, the point is, I've sat and listened to everyone for years talking about how you really do have to have someone that understands manual printing to work an auto. And I've been terrified of this. And prior to us getting an auto, we had another guy that printed who we trained up, like exactly
Mm.
what you're saying,
Yeah.
3 months hand holding, push, push, push. And he was just a Trojan. He was awesome. He didn't give a hoot about screen printing. He was a student, but
Yeah.
he just, I think he was a forward in the rugby team and just made it happen. So when we went to the auto, Lydia said, "Well, I'm going to be doing all of this now." And in my head, I was like, "This is a disaster,
Mm.
absolute
Yeah.
disaster." You don't know
Okay.
anything about squeegee angles or pressure,
Yeah.
but you know what? She's brilliant, and I don't just say that because she's my daughter.
Mm.
She asked me to register a 3-color job this morning while she was picking stock, and this is just before the staff came in, and after 20 minutes, she just stopped, came over, tweaked it, and it was done. And I was, fantastically embarrassed, rightly so.
Mm.
And so she runs it all out there, literally. She's managing staff. She's only 25. And,
Yeah.
some of the
Wow.
staff we've had have been pretty difficult, so I'm super proud of her. So
Yes.
in preparing to
Rightly
go
so.
away, in preparing to go away, right, for 4 weeks, it's a big question, right? So I
Mm.
went to her and said, "Look, Dad needs to go and see his mum, and what do you reckon? And how would you manage this?" And she's like, "Yeah, okay. So if you get because I do all the seps,
Yeah.
if you get all the film done, if we can get all those screens burned, ready to go, and you can have access remotely if there's if you choke and underbase is wrong or whatever. I don't want to start doing step back on a 400 hoodie order or something if
Mm.
something's wrong. If you can have access to do that, then yeah, just go." And that was just, what's the word, it was freeing for me. I
Yeah.
thought, wow, something's happening here. Obviously there's no sales going on, there's no need for new artwork, so that wouldn't work under normal circumstances. But
Mm.
so it's going to be a bit of a test, and we'll
That's
see how it
awesome.
goes.
Mm.
Feel for her a little bit, but the team, they're doing long hours now, this week and next week, and so yeah, I think you're right. Like, set a date. I'm going to
Mm.
do this, and that's a great test. I'm not going to be here,
Yeah.
and don't contact me unless the
Yeah.
place is on fire. And even if it is on fire, don't contact me ever. Um, I think that's the way to do it. And planning,
Mm.
having that ambition. We're out of space. We're in the
Yeah.
same dilemma as you are. The brewery over here is moving,
Mhm.
and we're like, maybe we should take one of those and keep this one. So that brings us up to where you're at now. But
Yeah.
your point earlier was, I would have got a bigger place to
I would
begin with.
avoid it. I would avoid it, to be completely honest, because of the things I didn't really counter for, which was having to set up internet in 2 places, having to pay for electricity in 2 places,
Yeah.
having to pay for 2 sets of corporate body rates for all that stuff that, like, what I'm paying for 2 tiny factories, I could be paying 20 grand less for one big one.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's a substantial figure that I didn't factor in when I needed more space.
Yeah.
Um, but I got cold feet and was a little bit tentative because of what was going on in the climate at the time,
Mm.
um, with COVID and how unsure everybody was about everything. But should have backed myself. So yes, I would heat against two factories unless it's possible to make a full leap. But my advice there would be, if you've got a solid business that you know you've got plenty of repeat customers and year on year you're making that little bit of growth or a big bit of growth, I would sign a longer lease and negotiate some free rent. So typically I will try and sign a 4 or 5 year lease and negotiate 3 months free rent. I use that 3 months free rent and that time period to get the new factory ready. So there's just a quick transition. You're there in a weekend and running on the Monday. So
that's what we did here. We got 3 + 3, and I got 2 months free and moved in. Yeah, literally over a weekend when we were ready. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Kind of scares me a little bit, thinking, yeah, we need to go to the next click up, but I don't like the idea of having 2 places. And I could throw a banana, into the other one from here. Yeah. But you're right, 2 sets of bills for everything and the setup.
I didn't think of it, and it really hit hard. Yeah, especially during the slower times. Yeah,
it's just a lot easier moving manual presses than an auto. That's tearing down an auto's not going to be a lot of fun. I did the install on this auto with, you're probably familiar with Howard from Leapfrog, who I guess you were alluding to earlier with respect to Anatol.
Yeah.
And he and I did that over 3 days, I think it was. Might be 4 actually. And it was a nightmare, although I now know how it all fits together. So in theory, should be able to do it again.
Have you got you've got a fully electric press, no pneumatic?
We have no pneumatic. We're on a Volt. It's called an Anatol Volt.
Yeah, that's the ones I was looking at back in the day. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and it is. It's great. It's super quiet. It's a very stealthy machine. Haven't had many problems at all with it. A couple of little things. The guys know how to run it backwards. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Easy to learn. There was a lot of settling and dialing in of things. But I'm guessing that's the same on any big press like that.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a 10 color. We run 2 flashes on it. Sometimes we'll run one if we need to get that extra color.
Yeah.
So it's more than big enough. In fact, we're talking about getting another one, and we were having a conversation about this last week, and we kind of went, what? I think we could get away with a 6 or 7 color on it. Like, I don't know if we really need another 10 to do this. But anyway, yeah, we like it. But yeah, I don't fancy moving it too far anyway, but we'll see what happens. You've probably got a lot more choices than we have in terms of other places to move into where you're at.
Sorry, I think my daughter's tapping on the window. She's all right. Yeah, there is a huge market here, even just around the area we're in, that I can get into a nice factory, which I'm really looking forward to narrowing that down next year and knowing that there's that next leap, which is always scary and a bit of apprehension sometimes on, do I really know what I'm doing? But but yeah, you just gotta make that leap, I think, and make room for growth, because I didn't do that at the start. I had to move quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay. We probably should start to draw to a close. I want you to think about whether you've got any questions that I may or may not be able to answer, but also, how do people get in touch with you? bornandthreads.com.au, is that right?
No, .com. So we always set it up as a global company. Originally, I was very ambitious about servicing the world, but we don't send stuff overseas very often. We have, but not that often. So no, it's .com, but there's a contact page. Our email address is just sales@bornandthread.com. Instagram, we welcome people to message us on Instagram. It's our main social media platform we service. But we typically will guide you to send us an email with your artwork so we can put it through our quoting process. But yeah, typically phone call or email. Yeah.
And any type of screen printing, you don't mind what kind of customer comes your way? You're completely cool with that? Yeah.
No, we service, the painting industry, from cafes, restaurants, breweries, bands, car companies, apparel brands, based on whatever they're into, frogs or all sorts of different prints. I'm not biased at all. It's more just about whether we can help with what you're trying to achieve. and your budget, because
Yeah.
we never tried to set ourselves up to be the cheapest. I think there's a lot of problems in some industries where there's just a race to the bottom. Everybody's undercutting each other.
Yeah.
We don't do a comparison. We don't try and check what anybody else is doing, other than making sure that we're getting a good price from AS Color, checking with them that we're on the right price structure, which we are. But yeah, I just think we offer a premium service and we try to accurately price that, because I think we solve a lot of problems before they even happen and walk people through that whole process if they've never done it before. Like you mentioned, they have no idea of how it happens, and not because they're ignorant, but because it's not common knowledge. And you learn it yourself when you start the industry. So I think making that course will be really nice to be able to feel like there's a whole database of info for a new person to feel informed, so they can make a choice and know what's best for them.
Yeah, excellent. Any tips and or traps that you want to share with people starting, or any cool things you've designed that you think make a difference in the production, or at the business end, at the front end, you know?
Oh yeah, okay. I mean, I got a few. I can give you a couple, and I've got some questions for you too, but I'll get to them. We've integrated credit card payment into Xero rather than a standalone service. So I think I've known a few small business friends that didn't realize they could integrate Stripe into their invoices on Xero and have a pay now button and all that kind of stuff. So I always try to tell people about that are using Xero for invoicing or quoting, is get Stripe integration or Square integration. Stripe is my preference personally. So that they can get that payment happening, because the amount of customers, when we added that years ago, but they would just pay by a credit card straight as soon as you sent the invoice, and it was paid in full. You didn't have to chase them. It was really took the weight off, and it's a great option, I think. Second thing for artists or people starting a brand is stop using Procreate.
Oh, amen. Absolutely. What a headache.
Yeah, so Procreate, it's fantastically accessible. It looks great on your iPad or your tablet, but as soon as we get it, unless you've maximized the artboard size and made the resolution as big as you can and drawn to that full artboard area, it's almost unusable nearly every time.
It's terrible.
So it's hard to say it, and I had a couple of tattoo artists that actually redrew their artwork because I gave them the specs of the resolution of the artboard and said max it out, and then we can take it into Photoshop and get rid of the little pixelated edges as much as we can with some tricks and make it a usable file. But Procreate, if I could give a tip to anyone starting a brand, actually spend the time to either get a free vector program or, you know, get access to the Adobe suite, which everyone's upset at Adobe at the moment, or Pantone for taking away their Pantones, but get access to a professional tool. My preference is always vector, but it doesn't suit every style of graphic design. But as screen printers, we love vector just because it's scalable without pixelation. It's very easy to work with, very easy to punch out all the colors. You can do a 10 color set in 5 minutes. It's really good. So yeah, Procreate. I would advise against making your entire garment designs in Procreate, because it's heartbreaking to tell someone that's put hours into a design, we can't use it. That is heavily pixelated. It looks great as a digital sticker at 80 by 100 mil. Looks great on the back of an iPhone case, but as soon as we take it to 26, 28, 35 centimeters wide, it's unusable. Yeah.
That's a good one. We with that. Creating artwork in Canva is the other one that does my head.
Same vein. Yeah. And then the third thing would probably be to other business owners, maybe like yourself as well, which is just to make a plan to allow yourself to work on the business rather than in it. I love working in my business, and I'm probably a better worker than a person that works on the business. I work better in the business, and I love working in the business, but then it goes nowhere. The Instagram posts stop, the things that, the new clientele, the expanding to have that stock holding and drop shipping for clients with their own brands that have outgrown their bedroom. It stops me doing those things. So that's where I'm trying to, learn to work on your business rather than in it. And that's part of making redundancies and processes, I think. Yeah.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Mm.
At the risk of sounding arrogant or more arrogant, I have the other problem in the sense that I constantly work on businesses and don't often, get too absorbed in doing them. So if you take this one as an example, as I said earlier, knocking out 100 t-shirts an hour, 4 or 5 plus hours a day, didn't last that long with me, right? Like partly because of my age and my shoulders falling out, but it just took me straight away from any of the design ideas, business design ideas, and development ideas. So I naturally gravitate back to that, and that's where I'm, the pig in the proverbial Chardonnay, as it were. So I don't struggle with that, but that can then become another thing you need to make yourself redundant from as well. So I'm constantly creating new business ideas that I can't fully integrate, new avenues. I'm very interested in live screen printing, for example.
Me too.
Want to work out how to build something in that space. But it's a massive distraction from normal business. So, balancing that. But yeah, that's so important to get people working on it rather than in it. I was hoping to catch up with some screen printers in the UK, some of whom I sort of met before, and they're doing interesting things online and in various spaces. But one of them is adamant that he will never work on his business because he loves screen printing. And I get it, right? I get the artisan element that you spoke about earlier, but it's a business as well, right? And you employ people, they're paying mortgages.
Yes.
They've got kids to feed and all the rest and need their holiday and so on. And there is a pressure on people to get that right. But if you want to stay as an individual printer, maybe with someone doing the artwork, your business is only going to get to a particular point. And that might be okay as well, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. So yeah, work on it, not just in it, or if you can, don't work on it and don't work in it. Go and actually get retired.
Isn't that the dream?
Yeah.
No, I believe that strongly. You got to find a balance, but I really respect the fact that my 5 staff, the 6 of us that are there, that I don't let it be lost on me that my business runs because of them, and I like to work for them. So when I'm bringing in new stuff, well, I think like this whole drop shipping and stock holding idea will serve my customers. Is it going to serve the business? Is it going to be a detriment to my staff? They're going to be annoyed picking stock every day and getting interrupted. So there's things like that I consider because I want them to be able to, feel like the decisions being made benefit them and don't risk their jobs or the business, because it is more than just you. It's not a you-based business anymore. Once you start employing people, it's making sure they get their wage and you're not risking anything that would potentially upset what they're expecting. Not that they're not horrible elsewhere. They're not idiots. They're all completely fantastic. But trying to honor the fact that they help you run your business.
Yeah. It also allows you to bring in that, you're working for them, that kind of servant master type leadership rather than the traditional kind of CEO, it's my way or the highway type approach. One of the things I'm often saying here, I find myself saying when, let's say someone needs to take a Friday off because something's happened, or they're upset because they keep popping screens or whatever it is like we have one member, in fact 2 members of staff are so conscientious about costs that they're always saying, look, we had an order in the winter this year, hundreds of hoodies, and what had happened is the guys had printed plastisol heat transfers just before, so the oven was down low, and of course they didn't put it back up. So the customer came on and said, these are falling off, they're cracking, when I get to that, it's just a reprint, end of story.
Straight away.
There's no way we're not going to do it.
Mm.
So the two of the guys came in and said, we want to pay for them. And I was like, no, we can't do that. And they were adamant. And I said, listen, if this business doesn't support you in every
Yeah.
stuff that you make and me in every, what is the point?
Yeah.
Literally, I'm not here to become a millionaire. Right? It's not about that.
No.
It's about helping one another to grow and to become a kind of family within reason, right?
Yeah.
With the exception
Yeah.
of my
There's
daughter.
boundaries.
Yeah. But
Mm.
I think that has, really helped the team feel part of it. And okay,
Yeah.
there was a stuff up, but no one got sacked, and actually it's
No.
okay. But don't do it
Yeah.
again, obviously.
Yeah. It's respectfully expected that you learn from that, but like, I'm not going to sack you over it. Like, I'm invested in you. You're part of
Yeah,
this. Let's
yeah,
figure it out. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Absolutely.
back to what you said about investing in
Mm.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. The questions I have to you, if you don't mind me asking. So you've been in business 6 years and have had some rapid expansion to get an auto and service that and fulfill it and have it running jobs all day. That's fantastic. Like, obviously you've got a great client base where you are, or whoever's coming to you there, they can see the value in what you guys are doing. What would you do different looking back from where you are now, like from then to now? What would you have done different? I'm curious. You've had a very quick growth by the looks of it, which is awesome.
It has been quick. Last year was 116% growth.
Wow.
This year looks around 60. We go by calendars, by the calendar year. And my main interest in that is what you were saying earlier. How much of this is repeat business? How much of it is new that looks like it's repeating? How much of it is new markets? Where's the wastage? Like, I don't like doing bands. Their expectations are bonkers, frankly.
Yeah, right.
From the
Price
perspective
wise.
of
Price
cost,
wise.
yeah. And they're just, they think it's fun to kind of be hard asses, whereas you're trying to run, a business. So it has been big, and we need to slow it, like literally, I've adjusted pricing and, increased minimums and those kind of things, and being tougher on certain, we might have looked at a 4-collar job at 20. We probably wouldn't now, you know what I mean? I'd say, look, come on, reduce, or it's going to cost more. What would I do differently though? I think it resonates with what you're saying about size. We moved into this place, we were like, we're never moving out. We had an auto on order, by then. And I think I'd said somewhere else recently that what I hadn't accounted for is how many pallets we take a week now and how there's no room for them, right? Just can't swing a cat. So same thing. I mean, it's exactly what you said, backing myself on that, and my daughter, I guess, as well, and saying, no, this isn't going to be big enough. And it helps me make that next decision. I do that differently for sure. I probably would have gone to auto sooner.
Yeah.
Not because we couldn't do it all on the manual, but because it just allowed us to cope with those peaks and troughs. And you get to a new peak and it might drop a little, and then you get a biggie. I just couldn't do it, especially with staff coming and going. We've been through quite a few staff. So I think I would have gone to an auto sooner. But one thing I would have done, and I tried to do this, it didn't really work, is I would have gone and found some proper training on screen printing. I did go to the UK a few years ago, and to be blunt, I sort of used it to sort of legitimize my expenses a little bit, but I did book in for some training, but by then I could do simulated process, and it was a bit late in the day and it was a little bit awkward, but I should have try to find something like that in the first or second year, and I would have benefited so much. Particularly around around creating separations and getting into AI sooner. We'd be learning an hour now. Learning what a raster is and what a vector is.
Yeah.
But also around actual printing, the physical, using a squeegee properly, learning off contact properly. I also wouldn't get a manual press with a back clamp, a rear clamp.
Yeah.
I'd go for a side clamps press. I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah. Way better for registration and holding registration.
And managing off contact more easily without having that screen kind of lay down, getting the right coverage that way. And and I think I probably would have more quickly gone for a better exposure unit. Spent a lot of time trying to build those, managed fairly successfully. But, when it came to doing halftones or, a good quality emulsion, if I can put it that way, it just wasn't up to it. And I think, putting money into that sooner would have been wise.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, doing something like this, to be blunt, I wouldn't have had any confidence to do this, but to be able to meet other screen printers, swap stories, learn from them, that's gold, to be blunt. It's really hard to do, and to find people that you can resonate with and not feel like you're a complete balloon or driving them mad through your own arrogance.
I was really fascinated when I got invited to this podcast, because I was like, such a good idea. Like I wanted to start a little screen printers guild in Melbourne, and
awesome.
I didn't think it would work just because there's so much, not competition, but there's so much like rivalry as far as like everyone's got their own niches. Some of them are tattoo artists, printers, and some of them are known for doing bands. And I don't necessarily think that we cross each other's paths too much, but I think some of them hold what they do very close to them as part of their own industry success. And I probably gave away some of my industry advancements and secrets in this podcast, which I don't mind, because I think there's more than enough work out there for everyone. Just do what you do. But I would love to bring a group of printers together to be able to actually hang out in person and talk like this candidly and just share, the nuances of screen printing and clients and all that kind of stuff. But it's why I was really interested to hop on the podcast. So I thought it was really interesting to finally talk to someone that's a screen printer. It's a very lonely business ownership life. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and I feel like I'm making friends everywhere, and it's been really. I mean, I haven't done many of these yet, but I've got several lined up, and awesome. Hopefully we can expand it. And I'd like to kind of get everyone on the podcast to meet up at some point. That would be really cool.
Well, on that, our 10-year anniversary, we do a T-shirt every year now. We started doing that a couple of years ago, with a new artist every year. Whether they're an artist we work with or one that we just like and we want to reach out to them and say, can you help us make our design, and give them a bit of a brief and let them go nuts. Our 10-year anniversary tee, I don't know if it was you or someone else that reached out on our Instagram, but I'm going to send you one. We put one aside for you.
Oh, brilliant. We have someone else that does that. It's another member of my family. Right. Okay, great.
Yeah, so
we're triple XL, mate, for me.
Yeah. No, they told me. I've got to decide. We printed a couple in that size up, and we've got another friend of mine that's been a big supporter of the business for a good 6 or 7 years, that he came and picked his up yesterday at the party. I got one there for you. And at 5 o'clock today, actually, in about 40 minutes, we're giving away 10 of them on Instagram to some people that have applied to our little competition that we did on there every year.
Oh, nice.
But I think it's great what you're doing, and I really enjoyed the chat, to be honest. It's nice to talk to someone that's going through similar problems and having, this awesome growth that they're managing as well. Like, and working with your family, that's incredible. Like I would love to work with my brother, but he's on a whole different level and doing his own thing. And I think it'd be interesting to have your family involved. It would probably present its own challenges, but it'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is my 11th company.
Wow.
But involved in totally different markets worldwide before, and reasonable success in a couple of them. Some of them were just pretty bad ideas, really. But this is the first one where I've ever engaged in any members of my family. My wife's a doctor. She doesn't want to have anything to do with any of our businesses.
Yeah.
And you know, fair enough. It can be super stressful, but it's actually been an amazing blessing working with my younger daughter. Like I've got 4 daughters and she's the third one.
Okay.
With this business, when it looked like it was going to be a business, I went to the family and said, look, this is going to be a business, and your sister wants to be part of this. How do you feel about that? And they were like, whatever, just get away from us. That's fine. Thanks for asking, but no, not interested. But what I found, and this is sort of a bit mushy in a way, is my daughter is an amazing support to me. Apart from anything else, kind of emotionally, when I get super stressed about something, she's like, you know what, it's just a t-shirt, Dad, like, relax. And that's been good. There are occasional moments when things don't go quite as, friendly as they should, because family is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But your kids, you've got 2 kids. I'm guessing one is around 3 and the other's younger, presumably.
Yeah, we got 2 girls. So I've actually got to road test that whole not being available thing a couple of times. So 3 years ago, I was not available for 2 weeks, but I was on the emails during the day if they needed me, and available for a phone call. But with my second child, who's 6 months old now, she was born in June, I was not available for 5 days, and it was so freeing to just be able to be in the moment, not even thinking about it. I did have to make one phone call to a problem client that my staff member was like, I don't know how to handle this person. But it was incredible to road test that, and drove me even further to make myself redundant so I can be more family orientated. But since we had kids, I stopped working as much. I put on more staff than I probably needed to allow myself to just do a 40-45 hour week. Maybe, I'm being honest with myself, 55, an extra 10 hours overtime at home after hours, but in this little office. But yeah, I have 2 beautiful girls, and maybe one day one of them will want to get into business with me, which is inspiring to see. That will be super. Maybe they'll want nothing to do with it because they've grown up with it and be like, this is, I have no interest in that, Dad, but you never know.
You never know. And that might be the final step in you becoming redundant, maybe literally redundant.
Yeah, literally.
Maybe that's father to daughter, who knows.
Yeah.
And
no.
mate, it's really great to meet you. Really great.
Yeah.
Really appreciated your honesty and your time and putting in the effort to this. It's really good. And look, I'd really love to check in again perhaps after June next year, when things are happened and the dust has settled, and
love
see
to
how it's going and work out. But let's stay in touch in the meantime. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me on and being so easy to talk to, and having obviously questions ready that you'd structured to talk about, because I can waffle, so that was good. You kept me on point. But no, thank you. It's such a good thing that you're doing, even just for this industry, to be able to talk, because I don't think, because we think our knowledge is what makes us money, but I think what makes us money is how we service our customers, which isn't something you need to hold to your chest.
That's right.
I think it's brilliant. No, well done, and I look forward to catching up with you again. If you're ever in Melbourne, please let me know.
Occasionally I am, for sure.
Yeah, but I'll send you that shirt. Thanks again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. All right. Take care.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.